Forgot it doesn't go to the B. I think it's in B. That is super bass. It is not done yet. It's got a few little issues. And if the owner gets on the chat, maybe we'll get into what those remaining issues are. Otherwise, we'll have to wait till the next video on that. Now, before we go any farther, because we had all the audio weirdness on that last stream when I turned off certain things and turned on others, I've got headphones. So I'm going to see if it goes weird now. Oh shit, I didn't even have it on. You didn't even hear that right. God. All right, so now I've got the mic on. So you were hearing just through this. Let's hear what the amp sounds like. God damn it. This is what it sounds like with the mic. Hey, Brett. So now, let me try the plug-in things. And we're not getting the weirdness. That's good. So let me repeat what I was going to do on the intro so you can get a better sense of where this is at. Then we'll talk about it, Brett. The self noise is practically non-existent at those levels. Now I'm going to turn off those plugins again because we're just going to use the voice for a little bit. I want the problem to happen live while I'm aware of it so I can find out what the cause and the fix is. So those plugins are off. No issues. Okay. Sorry about giving you the guitar coming through the blown out room mic, Dustin. I thought I had it switched, and I have a lot of variables here getting ready for this thing, and I had it all set up and tested. That was an hour ago, and I turned off the camera and stuff, and just while I was ready, and I forgot to push 3 buttons, and those were the magic 3 buttons. No, I don't want to insert ads. Fuck off, YouTube. All right. Sorry to start every stream that way. Just a minute in and they're like, hey, ask for money. All right, the chat is now open to everyone, Sonic Audio says. I didn't type that. So I have not seen that before. Hey, Victor Aloha. Hey, Brad. Is everybody on the cans or is it just me? Is that a headphone reference or are you drinking already? I don't know if it's a late night for you, Brad, or a very early morning, but I'm glad to see you here. Thanks for reaching out to me on the D202, I believe that was the number on that wonderful Tone Master. Nothing's better than a Tone Master, guys. Hey, PWT, still working on the AC30H2 Heritage. Replace all electrolytics, but still have loud hiss only when tetrode mode engaged with OP switch. Perfectly quiet when switch to triode mode. Well, the triode sucks. Triode mode sucks on those things. It's okay. Kind of makes it sound a little bit like 12AX7. But if you have noise when the when you're in pentode mode, not tetrode, sorry to be pedantic or pedantic, there's some of the remaining issues of the super bass. I don't know if you can't hear it now because I've got the mic off. David Zepp, can we ask technical questions? That's why I'm here. But PWT, if you're using the pentode and you've got hiss, A, that can be normal. It's a high gain tube. B, you may have a bad or noisy EF86. And I don't remember if I started alphabetically, numerically. So C or 3. I believe that Vox forgot to ground pins 2 and 7 of the pentode on that amp. Pins 2 and 7 on a EF86 are for shielding and internal shielding. And if they're not connected, then the tube will be noisier than it should be. So there are two ways you can do that. You can tie pins 2 and 7 to ground at the chassis, or you can tie them to the cathode, which will be just as effective as far as a shield. And I believe that's what you might be running into, because as far as I recall, Vox forgot to do that on those EF86 pins. So check that. It's probably not any of the 10 nanofarad disc caps in parallel with the 22 microfarad caps. The purpose of those configurations are this very small caps are there to filter frequencies that the large caps are inefficient at filtering. So the large electrolytics are great for most of the frequency range, but they're not very good at the stuff above 10 kilohertz. And so they'll add a little smaller cap in parallel to filter out the higher frequency stuff. Most classic guitar amps don't have it. It's not a problem if it does. It can only help. It's not going to change the sound either way. And David Sepp, David Sepp, know that I will get to your question in the order it was asked. I work through these in sequence, so I know that people get impatient. And to everyone watching for the first time, please take note of this right here. It really helps me out to see the questions in the chat, and please only ask any one question one time. Any thoughts on the AC15 H1 TV? Hey Jim, yeah, same issues with the pentode in that where they did not wire the shielding, and the turret board in that thing is a fake turret board. It's a really bad quality PCB with turrets soldered to the pads of the PCB, and then the whole thing's got like shock mounts and really thin wire everywhere, and it's really not a very roadworthy design. But when they're working, they can sound very good. So I hope yours works forever. I would not suggest investing in one unless you're just getting for an insanely low price. Hey Matt, have I ever tried replacing the stock master volume in a Hiwatt DR103 or DR504 circuit with the post-phase inverter master volume? If so, what I think of it? I have not, because it sounds good in a Hiwatt. The Hiwatt output section, unless you're playing it live at leads levels, in which case you're not hearing the answer to your question, stays clean. And so the pre-phase inverter master volume on the Hiwatt is in fact part of the sound, part of the design, and it does not need improvements. Plus a real Hiwatt from 69 through early 70s, I try to make as few changes to as possible. They're a rare beast. Every original solder joint that can be retained keeps the value up. Let me talk about, sorry, I got sidetracked. I'm sure you're being out there very patient, Brett, on your super bass. The remaining issues, the preamp tube sockets. I have cleaned them, and I've tried to retension them, and well, I don't know if you hear that. Let me turn on the mic. I'll make sure that didn't go crazy. Are we still good? Okay. So I would really like to replace at least V1 and V2, but preferably all three tube sockets. Talking? Okay. On the preamp tubes, because those old riveted sockets, once they go mechanically bad, they're just a potential cause of terrible sounds. Second of all, your 6550s. Two of them began to drift and bias, and it is not the bias supply. But right now, I've got two of your tubes and two 6550s I had here. Because with your original quad, one side just started to draw more and more, and it was like 78% dissipation and 45% dissipation. And I put these in, and now with the same bias settings, it's at 58% dissipation. So we need to get you some new 6550s or some EL34s, and you're aware of that. Also, the Brimar 12X7 you provided with the amp is noisy beyond hope. It's just useless. The two RCAs are fine. And the remaining issue with this amp is that with the super bass, which is flat down to like 3 hertz, it gets kind of fludgy, if that's a word, a little too thick, a little too congested in the very low lows, which affects the articulation, a pick attack and all that. You didn't hear that there because I had the master down, but if I had the master full up, not only would the neighbors be complaining, but it would sound really a little bit indistinct on the low frequencies, and that kind of overwhelms the rest of it. It's because it's designed for bass. It's super for bass. And without changing the values of the original caps and components on the board, I want to have your permission to play around with adding some series capacitors between the output coupling caps of the phase inverter and the master volume. So I'd have two like 33 microfarad caps or 22 microfarad caps, maybe 27 microfarad caps in series between the wire and the input of the master volume pot, which will put the output effectively closer to what it would be if they had some 22 nanofarad mustards, which will bring the the high pass frequency up from like 3 hertz to about 38 hertz. And that will dial out a lot of that sludge and yuck that's remaining. It's just not optimal for dirty guitar. Doing it at the kind of AC/DC Malcolm level, like I showed at the beginning, that's about as far as you can push it without getting it into, Kossoff's Quaalude Nightmare. So we'll talk after this. I mean, it's very promising. I'm very pleased with it so far. Hey, Matt, I appreciate you joining us. Hey, Greg, can I spend a moment talking about the advantage of the shared cathodes? It's not just cheapness. It's not cheapness in the slightest. You have to remember that the Marshalls started off by copying the Fender 5F6A Bassman, which used shared cathodes. And it wasn't cheapness so much as that Leo Fender, his design was for clean sounds, and he wanted it to be clean and to be full frequency. And since the two channels are not out of phase with each other at that point in the circuit, they can use a shared cathode. So by using a single resistor and a single bypass cap, you can save some components and give the performance that Leo wanted. In fact, if you look in AB763, that's what you find on V1B and V2B, where again, they are saving components. So technically they're saving money, but it gives performance, and it's simple, and it's one less thing to go wrong. And so when Jim Marshall built the first Marshalls, they were just copying what Fender had done, including the 330 microfarad cap. Sometimes they use 220. On this one, I've changed it to a 22, again, to desludgify it. There are people who will argue on the forums, and people love to argue on the forums, that the shared cathode has some magical quality due to local negative feedback between the channels and all that stuff. Oh, cool! Just in a quad of current match 68.7s. Very good, Brett. that'll do. The esoterica between split and shared is a great thing to type about. When you're actually playing the damn thing, you may not hear any difference, except that with the split cathode, the normal channel, the bass channel, which I'm not playing right now, has a little bit more gain. And the treble channel, which is what you heard, has a little bit tighter low end. Enough that once I make those final changes to the output coupling caps, I don't think this will need bright caps. It does not need to be made into a super lead, but just bringing it from bass focus to guitar focus while still being returnable to bass focus very easily. Should someone later want it to be stock super bass, it's very easily done. I am getting some crackle from your amp and a little bit increase in hum. All right, this 6550 is getting noisier. So I'm going to put it in standby for now. There are those who just swear that, hey, the split cathode is the best way, and it is different. You'll have more low end out of the treble channel, and if you're doing this on like a super lead and you convert your super lead from split cathode to shared cathode, you're going to have a lot more low end out of your treble channel than you did before, which is nice. You can have a little less gain from the normal channel. People may or may not notice that, but it's going to kind of give a nice amount of low end increase to the treble channel. So I think that's where people are hearing and not understanding that you can have the response from either cathode approach if other things in the circuit are adjusted at the same time. But most people out there on the Marshall forums who like to argue, they choose their hill to die on, they don't know what the hell they're talking about. From an amp design perspective, they are finding things that they like the sound of and playing, and then justifying it. And sometimes they don't understand the cause. It's like the myth that 70s Fenders sound bad because the brown caps. Brown caps sound fine. The shiny dark blue caps sound fine too. People change those out. The problem with those era amps is that the boards get full of DC, and so heat it up to change out for orange drops. You're heating up the board. You're driving out the DC. It sounds better afterwards. Wow! Until the DC comes back, and you don't have the original caps, which usually sound fantastic and in most ways better than orange drops. So it's one of the reasons I do these videos is to try to educate as much as possible without being like trying to pretend to be the font of all knowledge, because he's not here right now. Hey, Sash, have I ever worked on Bass Breaker series? No, I have not. I have many friends and colleagues who are very good techs who have, and they have nothing but horror stories about them. I have not had one come in myself, especially the models which have the auto bias circuit. I would avoid Danger Will Robinson. Yeah, Wes, man, I'm married to a design professor, so if I get typeface and font wrong, oh my God, the lecture starts. I still can't tell the difference. Anyway, I actually do know the difference. I just in practice they're interchangeable until I say it in front of her. But I would avoid the Bass Breaker unless you can afford to have an amp that if it dies, you can just get another one and you won't sweat it, because they are designed to be landfill, and they're designed emphatically to be landfill as far as I can tell. But until they die, they're supposed to sound pretty good. Haven't had one myself. All right, hey, BC Electronics, weird, maybe just weird to me, behavior from a 6G2. Had 120 hertz hum, okay, until the bias of 6v6s are increased over 70%, which that sounds crazy. All right. Amp needed new cam cap to begin with, converted the heater wiring to be balanced with, okay, that's good. I try new match tubes and rectifier, but I have not experienced that. Noisy until it gets biased too hot. And then you say, here's the clue. Sorry, your question was split up and out of sequence. Are there screen resistors being switched in during pentode mode? Some amps use screen resistors only in pentode. And some amps use resistors, don't have screens in either. It is best to keep the screen grid resistors and never run the output section in triode mode, because the output section in triode mode will sound bad on a 6G2. And especially if it's a triode connection that does not have screen grid resistors. Oh, okay. That was a question for PWT. Okay, sorry, yeah. No, on the pentode mode, what you're calling tetrode mode of the AC 3015 Heritage with the EF86, there is no screen grid resistor. There's a resistor from the screen to the B plus, and there is a cap from the screen to either the cathode or to ground. And the way that's wired, that cap always stays in place, I believe. But the resistor to the screen is switched out for a wire going to the plate. But I've never had an amp that's noisy until it's biased too hot. That seems crazy to me. There's something else happening there. Where is that one? Sorry, I had four things from you all out of sequence, so I thought they were all one together. Can't believe I had the intro on this, because that would have been clipping like hell. One of these days, I'm going to do a section of a video where instead of having my voice at this level and the guitar at the same level, I'm going to do them relatively correct. So the guitar will be at this level, and the voice will be down here, and you'll turn your phone up to hear what the hell I'm trying to say. And then the guitar comes in, and everyone goes deaf and gets mad at me. It's hard to get a distorted guitar sound to sound impactful and loud on YouTube, because we have our voice so high up. I'd really have to have the voice at least 12 dB lower than the guitar to give any sense of the relative scale of things. Dustin knows exactly what I'm talking about. Oh, Joe's going the 4-cable method route. Okay, good luck. Hey, 1217, Trainer YBA4, same as YBA1 circuit and transformers. Circuit breaker's dead. What size fuse would replace as a replacement for the breaker? Also, is there a 15-inch guitar speaker that doesn't suck? Well, 15-inch guitar speakers, there are a lot that don't suck, but they may not be the speaker of choice for you. There are a lot of different speakers out in the world for that reason. Try to play as many 15s as you can to see what you think. I cannot. It's like telling someone who they should date. As far as the fuse goes, YBA4, if it's got 4 6L6s or 4 EL34s, it probably needs a 3 or 4 amp fuse. I would look at the amp and say, is it closer to a Marshall or is it closer to a Fender? And look at the various models of those things and say, well, at 120 volts, 4 amp is what both Marshall and Fender use, or Fender used a 3 amp. We try that first, and if it blows, try a 4 amp. But whatever you do, get rid of the damn circuit breaker. It's probably rated for 5 amps, which is inadequate, and the circuit breakers fail this long afterwards. Pardon me, I'm just making weird mouth sounds. Weirder than normal, I mean. Hey, David. How would I reduce the B plus voltage on the Laney PA60? The anode voltage is 595 volts DC, 100 volts lower for the screen. The transformer is 420. I would, all right, you already replaced the screen resistors with 1.5K. All right. Well, I don't think you can replace the B plus voltage all that much in an existing amp without causing a lot of other problems, because when you convert one form of energy to another, it usually converts to heat. So if you were to do all kinds, you could do a big chassis mounted diode for the center tap and drop some there. Or you could do something here, some big old resistors, but then you're going to change the field because it's going to be a current limiter. What I would suggest is the cheapest, easiest, most reliable way is let the plate be high. High, even that high plate on a 6L34 is going to be okay. Use what's called a Zener diode on the screens. So if you need to lower your screens 100 volts, get some 100 volt 5 watt Zener diodes and maybe some 3 to 5 watt 47 ohm resistors. Put the resistor right at the screen as physically close as possible, even maybe that much of a lead between the resistor and body and the pin, the grid pin of the socket, and the other side of that resistor, a Zener diode going to the raw screen supply. And you will have each screen dropped 100 volts. Look online for this. You'll see which direction the anode goes to do this. But there's not a lot of current through a screen. If things are happening normally, there's not going to be much current draw. So a little 5 watt Zener will not get hot. It is designed to do that drop. It doesn't negatively change the feel. It doesn't generate heat anywhere else, so throw all your other voltages in the amp off. And it's going to cost maybe $2 for the parts and $8 for shipping, sadly. And it's certainly going to be a lot better result than using a MOSFET to reduce the B+. A MOSFET, it seems like you already know how a Zener works. That's good. A MOSFET is on paper a great thing. In practice, I found most MOSFETs used for power reduction die. No matter what you do, no matter how well you heat sink, no matter what the specs are, they die because they're not up to the task. And a simple Zener seems to do a better job. After the diode bridge is a 500R to a 2K5 to a 22K to a 10K in the power circuit. Okay, well, that's going to be dropping resistors, I believe. You're describing dropping resistors for each stage. So 500R, but if you have all that resistance after the diode bridge to the next node, that's an issue. But I think you're describing all the series droppers there, I think. $1.9K is not too bad, Dan D. Yeah, it's you got to do the math. What is that? What percentage of 1.5K is 1.9K? You're probably right at the verge, but if they're matched to each other within a 0.1 or 0.2K, you're fine. If you don't have any hum, if you don't have any noise. Oh, one of the things I did on this bass breaker, I'm sorry, not bass breaker, the super bass, which I've not shown in the videos. This thing had no grid stoppers on the grids of 2 of the 6550s, and then from each one per side there'll be a 1.5K to the grid of the other ones, so almost nothing. So I have changed it so each grid is getting 5.6K individually, which does help with the background noise and just some general graininess I was getting before. Hey, Chris R. Yeah, AC15C1 V2 is the cathode follower stage, which has about 200 volts on the cathode. That's where you want to use a Chinese or a Slovakian tube, not a Russian tube. The Russian tubes do not do well with high voltage on the cathode. So get a JJ ECC83 for that. And depending on how much money you want to spend, either JJ ECC83 for V1 and V3, or like the Electroharmonics 7025s, the current ones for V1 and V3. The Electroharmonics long plate LPS is also a good choice for our phase inverter. It's too microphonic typically to use as a preamp tube, but if you were to have, say, if you want to go esoterica, you can do the EH7025, then the JJ ECC83, then the Softtech long LPS, that'd be a nice setup. Or you can just do all 3 JJs. For the output tubes, I've had very good luck with both Electro-Harmonix, Tungsol, and JJ EL84s. But yeah, 71 and 89s are always better than EL84s when you can get good ones. It's not that they're going to have a lot better sound. They're just going to be a little bit more rugged. That's what they're designed to do. But so long as the EL84s are working, they're all going to sound good. Runt 50 takes pedals really well in the clean channel. The clean channel on a Runt 50 is the normal channel of a super reverb. So if you can use the super reverb, you can use a Runt 50. I will say, and if this gets back to Dave, he already knows this. I told him in person. There's a cap on the output of the clean channel of the Runt 50 that I think should be lowered. In stock form, I believe it's a 22 nanofarad, and I changed it on the last one I had into a 4.7 to better sound like the Fender clean channel. And he said that he agreed, and he had changed that in later runs. So it depends on the Runt 50 which version it is. That's the thing. If you talk to John Surrey, you talk to Dave Friedman, you talk to any of the guys doing this for real, they say, yeah, version 1 sounded great, but some players said they had this issue or that issue. So version 2, we changed this one little thing. A lot of companies just never admit that anything could possibly be wrong, or don't want to retool, or don't want to change their parts inventory, or their production notes in terms of telling, all the paperwork tells people which component to load up in the automatic loader or whatever. No company, no individual designer is perfect, but the really great ones are ready and willing and able and understanding that they will need to adapt as more information becomes available. I hate to do this to you. I'm terribly dry-mouthed, and I'm making weird sounds. I'm going to go get some water. I'll be right back. We're going to do the short break. Where's my short break thing? Is it here? That's right. I've got to manually do that. We're going to take a very short break. I'll be right back. There will be coffee coming up, Greg, I promise. But I had like 3 cups already this morning, and my mouth was just feeling like sandpaper. So switched to water, thought I'd be fine, and then ran out of water. And it was, hopefully you guys didn't hear it, but I was hearing my throat just kind of make weird gurgling sounds, and I was getting real smacky, real lip smacky. Hey, Nick, working on an old Audio Guild amp. I don't know anything about that. 7591, no screen or grid stoppers in original design. Thinking of adding for tube longevity. Value suggestion, treat it like a 6L6. Give it some 1.5Ks and some 470 ohms, you'll be fine. I've never had any Bartels on the bench, but if I get one, you'll know. I'll do a video on it because they're things of beauty. Mark does fantastic work. I don't have any thoughts on the circuit or his master volume because I've not had one of his in. I'm sure he's doing everything just right. He's a really good designer. It does impeccable work. Probably the best craftsman, to my knowledge, ever in the amp space, if you want to call it that. Welcome to amp space. Maybe I can talk about the tonal and performance difference between 6CA7, harder to say than you think, versus 6550. Well, one's a American Eel 34, and the other one's a beefed up 6L6. There's not a huge difference between, between the 34. There's not, in a Marshall circuit, the differences which are there between a 6550 and an Eel 34 are not fully taken advantage of. Let's put it that way. The potential differences are not realized in most Marshalls. Now, in a super bass, you will hear more of a difference because the potential to have really, really thunderous low end is there, which you don't get from a lead or super lead. So I'll tell a lie. In the super bass, you can hear the differences more, but I don't think that either one is bad. The super bass as it is right now, even with the mismatched 6550s, this is not what Malcolm used. But if you're, if this were recorded in a different room with different mics by Mutlanga, you would say, "Wow, that sounds just like Malcolm." Or you could change to 34s, and very few people would tell the difference. Moving the mic half an inch makes more of a difference. Moving the mids and treble pots, just like from 1 to 2, makes a bigger difference than the tube type. Also, amp came missing verb tank, tube-driven transistor recovery, cap coupled, no driver transformer. I would look at some of the tanks used for Ampeg reverber rockets, which also are cap coupled. But the transistor recovery might be the thing, because the transistor recovery, man, I have no idea what you got there, Nick. You'd have to do a bunch of math probably, but you can, if you have access to one of the tanks sold for a reverber rocket, you can cross your fingers. It's a $30 gamble. I don't like when esoteric designs use a tank that are made for that one model, then 15 years later that model is no longer made, and so that tank's no longer made, when you could just design around something which is in common use. Nice on the sausage white bean skillet, Wes. Hey, question on screen should be on the left because it overlaps with the live chat. Is it overlapping for you guys? I don't know. It maybe you meant when I was over here, but I'm trying to remember to sit over here. I've looked back at this and on the screens that I have, and I've got so many screens. I don't see the chat overlapping with the question on the screen. Does anyone else agree? On a TV screen using Chromecast, you guys are having it. Huh. Oh, okay. Well, let's do something. All right. Give me a second, because I've got 3 different scenes used for this thing. Let me put this a little bit higher, so a longer question will appear there. All right, we're going to copy that, and we're going to change scenes now. I'm deleting the old one, and I'm hiding that. And then to the third one. See, this would make more sense if you guys could see what I was doing behind the scenes, but This means later in the chat I won't have to do this again. Thanks for letting me know. I had no idea because I was looking at iPad and iPhone and various things using Safari, Chrome, and then the YouTube app. All right, so now I'm on the right, which is about the only way I'll ever say that in life. I need to angle this a little bit. Let's see. Thank you for letting me know. I had no idea. It is really hard to keep up with all the very shifting standards out there, especially when they're not documented. I've never seen anyone on YouTube say, hey, by the way, be aware that if someone's watching on a Chrome thing, it's going to be... Any of you guys see Mick from that pedal show video yesterday on how they do their videos? He's doing everything I'm doing, but he's doing it 2 and 3 times. So I'm glad to know that I'm not alone in my madness. There's a lot more to this than most people are aware of. Hey, Dandy, I was glad to see that I changed the V1 bypass cap to 25 microfarad. I changed it to 22, but 25 is the same. I had previously thought that might be a good idea to try on the 71 Super Elite 100, but I've not seen it done before. Well, I'll just do stuff. I don't wait to be told on the forums that it works because I know what the math is. You know, I know how a cathode bypass cap works and what the intents are and what the variables are. And you know, I could probably change that 22 to a 4.7, and no one would hear the difference. There's a lot of low end out of it. 22 bypassing an 820 with a 12AX7 with a 100K plate at a nominal 300 volt supply. Those Mesa 6550s were new old stock sealed in plastic. Well, they might have been, but they were junk. Mesa never made a tube in their life. They're Sovtex. And let me show you something about those Mesas. Silver base, gray, shiny chrome base, blue, and these two are a darker color than either of these. These two are more of a nickel, and they just have blue paint dots. They don't have the labels. So this was an actual pair. That's why this is the pair that's still in your amp. This sold to you as a pair have different current draws. One's rated as gray, one's rated as blue. This one's chrome. This one's a matte silver. These are from different years of production or eras of production, let alone mismatch. And this one's smoked and this one's not. I don't mean it's burnt. I mean the inside of the glass has been smoked. These are from different years. And if they were sold to you as a matched pair, a new old stock matched pair, there might have been some old tubes lying around that on a tube tester showed as matched, but a tube tester typically tests at 200 volts DC, which is worth the box that the things came in. You've got to test either in an amp or a real tube tester that can give 400, 500 volts on the plates, which very few testers out there do. So I could match all kinds of stuff at low voltage that wouldn't hold up in the real world. I mean, you can have tubes sold as matched that work fine at 200 volts. They won't even work in a Princeton. Believe me, I've seen this happen. Apex matching. But I digress. I don't remember how to read the date code in F&Ts. I don't think it's difficult. Some F&Ts I think have a code and some of them don't. I can tell if they work or not. A Stepford even at SIRS, probable the volume pot of a 12-year-old AC15C1. How's an AC15C1 12 years old? That model came out less than 12 years ago, I think. Incidentally, just gave up after bright cap and resistor removal. Volume is approximately 1/3 level with knob on 0. Well, it's very unlikely that the volume pot died if you changed out if you just removed the bright cap and changed out the 300. If you removed the input resistor but you did not jumper it, that volume will not work anymore. You've got to. It's not enough to take out the 330K resistor. You have to bypass it. You have to bypass it, otherwise no signal will go to that volume pot. So that's probably what you ran into. I don't think the pot aged and broke. Okay, you jumped the input resistor. Well, you may have something else going on, but it's very unlikely that that pot just died coincidentally at that time. So I imagine if I had the amp here, I could take a minute's worth of measurements and say there's the problem. But I don't know if maybe you have a bit of solder on the other side of the board, which is bridging where the old bright cap used to be or something. I'd have to look at it. I can't, but it's very unlikely that your pot just died. It's possible. All things are possible, but it's not probable. The more I see all these Baseman videos, the more I kind of want one. Basemans are awesome. I got a whole bunch more Baseman videos coming up soon. Hey, Tanvir has got a 65 Princeton reverb issue. Started making a sort of rustling, warping noise when playing on certain notes past the 9th fret. Have I come across this problem before? Yeah, it's often a sign of bad filter caps. Filter caps are not an on-off proposition. It's not like they work fine, and then there's flames. Think of it like a 9-volt battery. It starts off at 9 volts and then quickly goes down to 7 volts. And for most of its working life, it's 7 volts. And then all of a sudden it goes down to 3 really fast. And from 3, it's going to go down to 1 really fast. And then if it dies and you leave it in the remote control for several years, you open it up and then there's all that white gunk everywhere. That's what happens when it leaks. But a filter cap's much the same way. Consider that your filter cap is a battery. This is an analogy, and yours is down from 9 volts to like 1 volt. It's still technically working a little bit, but it is not decoupling the stages from each other, and you're going to be getting what are called ghost notes. Rustling, warbling noise is a very common area. If I play an amp which is working well but has very low filtering, say AC15, if I play here on the neck pick on the bridge pickup, may sound fine. I play up here, sounds a little bit weird. I go to the neck pickup and I'm playing up here. Everything's out of tune, and there are all these added notes coming in from nowhere. That's a working amp that you'd run into with an AC15 or maybe an original JTM 45 that you would not run into with a Twin or a Super Lead or a 2203 or a Princeton unless the filter caps were failing. And if the filter caps started to fail, that'd be one of the symptoms you'd get. So that'd be my best. That'd be my guess, especially since the Princeton reissues, like all the Fender 65 and 68 series, use those terrible quality IC brand filter caps, which fail if you look at them, let alone try to use them. No, Dan, I would use the metal films for droppers, and I build the rest of the A864 using carbon films. I would not use, pardon me, unless paid extra, I would not use carbon comps in building a new one because the carbon comps aren't being made anymore. So I'm saving my remaining stash of carbon comps for restoring vintage 50s and 60s Fenders primarily. If I were building an A864, AB165 today, I'd use carbon film for all the rest of the stuff that's not in the power supply. And Tanvir, Wes is right. You could also have a bad tube, but specifically in the Fender reissue series, I would also suspect the filter caps as being very likely. The good news is on a Princeton, you can see them. They're on the board. You can see if they're leaking or not. They don't always visibly leak when there's a problem, but they often do. It'll look like orange, earwaxy, snotty stuff is coming out of the positive end, if that's the issue. It doesn't have to be a lot. Any little crusty bits are a good sign or a bad sign. Thanks, Greg, on the like suggestion. It is a secret. The avatar's covering my left eye. I just moved it from over here to over here. Oh, I know what you mean. Okay, so back when I was over there, yeah, I kept getting it. I want to sit here. This is where I sit the 90% of the time when I'm work editing and stuff. But if I sit here, then the text has to be small. And a lot of you guys are old with bad eyes, and so you need larger text to see what I'm talking about. So I'm trying to help you out with large text, which means I got to move my ass out of the way. Before, I kept forgetting, and I'd be covered over here. Now if I forget, you don't see my shoulder. So sit how I like. Okay. Sorry, watched too much Airplane. I'm not going to make that face on the internet again. Jesus Christ, that looked terrible. Fellow guitarist said, I don't want to be bothered by those who are amp ignorant. Thank you very much. I'm not bothered. I would not say, hey, you guys are amp ignorant, and I'm not bothered or avoid people. I'm here to make people less amp ignorant, hopefully. And I think if you hang out here long enough, if you're crazy enough to, you might, if you're not careful, you might learn something. If I rant about the amp ignorant, it's mostly in response to the various internet forums and so many guitar review channels that tell you about what amps are good, and they're not qualified. And it's fine if they say, hey, it works for me, I like it, I like the way it sounds, but to say this is a good amp, this is great, especially when, man, good compared to what? What's your basis of comparison? I've seen some guys out there raving about amps that sound like Gene Simmons fighting his way out of a wet bag. Sorry to give you that image, but they just rave about it because they've never heard anything better. They don't know what good is. So if this is good, if this is their good, wow, that's great. And if this is your good, that's the great that they're telling you to buy. Funny how they're, I don't want to go off on a rant on all the review channels. I think you guys already know. Hey Sash, I like the G12C. The G12CS is just a little bit smoother on the top end, which some people will like. But especially with a twin, I like that. If you're going after a twin kind of thing, I like that kind of airiness. It's not that the CS is dark; it's just a little smoother. You have to play one of each. It's really hard to talking about music is like dancing about architecture. Certainly in regards to describing things like that. You'd be happy with either, you'd be happier with one of them, and I cannot tell you which one of those you'd be happier with, but I am happier with the C versus the CS. Is there sound in amp space? There has to be, right? Well, we were told in space no one will hear you scream, but what do I think of Marshall SV20H versus the 1987X and 1959 SL in terms of quality? Well, the SV20H is not, there's no quality there to judge. It's garbage. The 87 and the 59 are both pretty good. If you undo the heater balance stupidity that they did with that little blue pot that's not rated for the current. That's an easy thing to do. And if the power transformer never dies for you, which they're prone to doing because they've been using crap transformers since the mid '90s, basically. But if someone said, "Hey, you have to take one of these 3 amps," I'd take the 87 or the 59 in a heartbeat, and I would be mad at anyone who made me get the SV20. Let's see. Yeah, BC Electronics. I'm looking at your question here, and okay, because it's spread out into three, which is difficult. I don't think you'd be getting hum in that circuit from under-filtered. But here's the thing: if you bought one of the CE manufactured can caps, the multi-section can caps, you may have a bad can cap. Those things are garbage. I've stopped using them as much as possible. Only if clients insist on having that look, don't want me to put good caps inside instead, and they understand that it may last 6 weeks. You may just have a bad can cap, in which case the hum and the bias would no longer be mysteries. You'd have bad, brand new caps because it's the CE distribution multi-section can caps, which are not good. Even though they bought the old Mallory equipment, they're not operating correctly. Sorry. All right. We are coming up to the top of the hour. We'll do our first break pretty soon. But what's my opinion of the Germino Marshall JTM45 clones? Hey, Chris. Thanks for joining us. Greg Germino makes fantastic amps. If you want a traditional sounding Marshall style amp, he is your one-stop shop. Absolutely from stern to tail, stem to stern? Recommend everything he does. His build quality is great. His choice of components is great. The sound is better than that of the amps he's emulating. The only thing I'd say is that he builds them the way, certain aspects of them are built the way they actually were, as opposed to what people think. So go play the 45, go play the 50, go play, his various models and see which one sounds better to you, because unless you've already played a lot of the vintage examples, you may not know which one you're after. And you may think, oh, player X used a amp Y and I'll get the Germino that sounds like that. You get it home, you're like, my God, that sounds dark and flubby. Well, player X also used a tone bender. So not a tone bender, a treble booster. So, play them in person or call Greg and ask his suggestions. But if you're looking for a JTM 45, they're phenomenal. Now on my channel, I've got some videos on his JTM 45 model where someone did buy one and was unhappy with the sound because they were not getting the amp that they thought they were getting. And I made 3 little bitty changes to it that Greg would have made for him. And he was very happy at that point. But if you want to look at the inside of the Germino, look at those videos. All right, we are going to take the first of 2 breaks at the top of each hour. And I'll see you guys back in 7 minutes. And some of you lucky so-and-sos will get an ad. Sorry, just how the world works. See if the weirdness happened. No weirdness. Who knows? Anyway. What's that chord? I haven't played it too long. Diminished, thank you. No, it's half diminished. You sure about that, Diego? Maybe I'm voicing it wrong. Anyway, I'll practice later. If Steve Selvage was here, he could make all that work. My hands are not woken up enough to even attempt Achilles, but I did it for you guys. I'm a giver. I'm a giver. Hey, Dandy, that's a Larmar in the super bass, and that Larmar is turned down to like 10 o'clock. I mean, it's still loud. Here, let me see if this works. Testing. All right, didn't go crazy either. All right, good. Last week, whenever I hit these buttons, the audio for the stream went wonky. Anyway, for those who weren't here at the beginning of the stream, I'm going to let you hear what the amp sounds like to this mic. This is the room volume I'm playing at with the master down at 10 o'clock. So here's what my voice sounds like. And total clipping of the mic. Which, the mic's fine, but the mic pre was clipping. So that's loud. That's deluxe reverb on 4 or 5 loud in here, but it's fun to play. I'm not doing it for long periods of time, and the sound is mostly going right behind me. If I was back here, I'd be in the blast zone. But I have to watch out for my ears. But occasionally, I like to dip my toes back into what life used to be like. E minor, D sharp diminished, D major. Okay, so you're doing the D sharp diminished passing tone where I was doing the D major 7. I'll work that out. I'll work that back. I used to know how to play that. There are a lot of things I used to remember how to play. I'm pretty good with the amp trivia on here. Everyone tries to stump this chump. But I forget some chord progressions from time to time. Okay. I should have the questions bounce around the edges like a screensaver. I think not. I think not now. Pong. Thank you for telling me those chords, Diego. I'll revisit this after this. What's crazy to me is that, man, I am of the generation that had the needle and the record, and I'd play it at slow speed, and I'd move the needle back, and I got real good at moving that needle back, working out, trying to hear what it was. And now, man, I can basically separate everything into different stems, and there's videos on how Jimmy Page farted, and I don't have time to watch those videos, obviously, because I don't remember the chord change. But there's so much information available on all this stuff now that was never there when I was starting out. It can be like trying to drink from a fire hose, but you know. Hey, Dan D, a lot of people don't want an AB165 Bassman because it doesn't have reverb, doesn't have tremolo, doesn't have an effects loop. They tend to be noisy, especially in the condition most of them are in. So yeah, that's a good price. Get one, get it fixed up. You got an amp that'll rival. I don't know what this is worth on the market. This 74 Super Bass, especially now that I saved it from the previous techs who are charring it. But I know it's worth a lot more than that Bassman. But I also know that if I had one of those Bassmans on this bench right now, I could get very similar sounds. You all want that. What have I got what has it got in its pockets? Sorry, I saw Meryl's comment about Bilbo. Let's see. Hey, Chango Malo. The Blackface AB763 circuit is in pretty much every amp made back then. Aside from the Champ, the Princeton, and the Bassman, yeah, all the other amps offered in the 60s were pretty much the same circuit. That continued by and large through the mid to late 70s. Other than speaker layout and output transformer, is there much difference between amps circuit-wise? Well, there are differences in the power supply. For instance, a twin would have solid-state rectification, whereas a super reverb would have tube rectification. There are differences in the filtering. For instance, a twin or super reverb would have series caps for the first filter stage, whereas a Vibrolux or a deluxe reverb would have parallel caps for the first stage. The dropping resistors are different, like a Vibrolux or a deluxe reverb has 10K droppers, whereas a super reverb or twin is 1K and 4.7K. As far as the stuff on the main board, there's only two differences that I've ever seen of the AB763s. The AA had some different things, and there's some transitional amps out there. But for the AB763s, the amps which had an 8-ohm load, like the Vibrolux, and I believe the Vibrolux, and certainly the Deluxe Reverb had a 47 ohm resistor in the phase inverter to ground, and all the 4 and 2 ohm amps like the Twin, the Pro, the Super had 100 ohms there. And the Super Reverb is also a standout in that the mids cap in a Super Reverb on both channels is a 22 nanofarad or 20, whereas on all the other Fender AB763s, the mids cap was a 47. Other than that, it's the same board. So the same board, 1 to 3 components change on that. Basically 2 power supply designs, and then a couple of changes in terms of bias and rectification, and different transformers and speakers and widths and sizes, and whether it has a bright switch or not. You have all those different models based on the same concept. And yet a Vibrolux sounds very different from the Twin, which sounds very different from a Deluxe Reverb. So collect them all. I wish we could. Oh man, you're just trying to make me feel bad, Steve, with the tarts and a Massey Hall. I imagine Massey Hall sounded a lot better when they were there. And I've actually not found any Portuguese tarts outside of Belém, worth eating. I was disappointed with the ones I found over most of Lisbon compared to the ones in the Pêche de Belém, and the ones in Paris and London were sad, sad disappointments. But maybe Toronto's got the secret down. I'll have to find out at some point. Yeah, I watched Mick's whole video too, out of professional curiosity to see what he was doing differently than me, and if there were any really great ideas that I had not cottoned onto yet. Basically, the only thing that had not occurred to me was to have enough money to have the full Apollo system and the Neve summing bus. Maybe someday I'll have a big Neve summing bus. That actually seemed a little bit overkill to me, but I liked the pre's on the front end. I imagine that they're getting better results with those Neve pre's than I'm getting with my Motu, but they get more subscribers and views and likes and stuff than I do. In fact, YouTube has been punishing me of late. I have more subscribers than ever. The video I posted yesterday on that Tone Master is already at like 7K, and yet I'm making less money per month than I was 6 months ago. I don't understand YouTube. I imagine there's probably some massive class action thing that a lot of channels could do, but in the meantime, we'd all lose our channels if we complained about it. So I think we just take the dribs and drabs that they're willing to give us, and that's all we can do. Do you need a compressor pedal to play country music? No, of course not. No, most people who play country seem to think that you have to have a compressor pedal and a slapback delay, and a lot of them sound all the same. I cannot stand the sound of most compressor pedals, but I'm an outlier. But of course, if you're doing modern country music, it doesn't matter what you're using because the whole thing's going to sound like ass anyway. So, you know. Wow, it's been long. It's been 15 years. Jesus, Dustin. I thought that sounded been out a couple of years. Man, this last 10 years have just gone. I found a picture. I'm not going to show you guys. It's just depressing of me in 2012, and I'm so thin, and I'm just looking so good, and I've got muscle tone and everything. Health issues are a bitch, man. I don't want to be specific, but there's a reason I look like I look now. But if I could snap my fingers and have 2012 me on here, I would. I'd probably get more viewers. Might even have some female viewers. I do get depressed about how much of a sausage fest guitar can be. Let's see. All right, A major 7, D sharp. Okay, so that's what you're talking about, Diego. All right. Well, that's what I played the second time, and then you told me it was something else. So yeah, I wouldn't think of it as D sharp diminished. Wouldn't it be? Are you sure it's the D sharp diminished? So you're. Okay, I guess that is right. I've been playing. So first time I played it, I thought I was wrong on that D major 7, which is correct. But what I was wrong about was whether it's a D sharp diminished versus a C sharp diminished. I had misremembered, obviously. I've been playing the C sharp diminished because it's so related to A. Yeah. It's not a C minor, a major 9. It's definitely 7 on that. Anyway, let's see. Thank you for that. Where was the button I needed to push on that? Country musicians today probably don't know how to roll a rope correctly. All hat, no horse. Is there a truth to purposely unmatching power tubes for different tone? I twin biased my deluxe reverb and can match them or unmatch them. Well, you're going to get a slight difference in harmonic distortion and the complexities thereof if they're pulling different amounts. But the trouble is, there's a window within which it's fine to do that. If you get outside that window, you're going to have a lot of hum in the output because they're going to be they're going to be biased very different, drawing different amounts of current, which means that the common mode cancellation will no longer be there. So within the realm of it doesn't hum, anything in between those two goalposts is fine creatively. And if you like it, if this is 50-50 and this is too far apart, that's noisy, and that's perfect. If you like it here, so here's the middle and here, so one's drawing a little bit more, that's fine. You be creative within what's safe and doesn't make noise. But it's not something worth chasing too much. Because you could set the output bias a certain way and you're like, hey, there's the magic, and just write down these numbers and always do it this way. Then 6 weeks later, you change the tube in your phase inverter. Well, it throws all that other math out of the way because each phase inverter amplifies by a slightly different amount. Each triode does. So the phase inverter tube changes that itself. So you can have too many variables to know what's really going on. All right, PWT. The first one, the slider switch on that amp is pentode triode mode for the EF86. The other one is pentode triode mode for the EL84s. Only use that in pentode mode if you want your amp to sound good. The EL84s sound terrible in triode mode. But if you're having noise when they're in triode, in pentode mode, or tetrode if it says it there, I hate that it says tetrode when everyone calls it pentode. But you don't want to have, if it's noisy if the output section, I'm going to try this sentence again. If your EL84s are really noisy in pentode mode or tetrode mode, as is apparently printed on there, then you have a problem in your amp. And when you're at triode operation for those EL84s, the entire level is being turned down enough that you're not hearing the issue, but the issue is still there. So you may have bad tubes. You may have a bad phase inverter. You may have something else wrong with the amp. And it's only apparent in the louder tetrode/pentode mode. Given all that, and since you're describing the other, I forgot that they did the output triode mode. It's not related to the EF86 grounding issues, but if your amp does not have pins 2 and 7 either grounded or tied to cathode, then you have another issue, in which case you may not be experiencing a problem that you're aware of, but once you fix the grounding shielding issue on the EF86, you may like your amp even more. In contrast to some amps, the Vox AC151C1 sounds phenomenal above 100 dB and awful below 85 dB. What is about the EQ and power section that makes it react so much better to being cranked? I don't think it sounds awful at lower volumes. I do think you're experiencing two phenomena. Phenomena. First of all, your speaker is going to be moving more air and the excursion is going to be fuller at the higher volumes, so you're going to be getting more actual bass and mid-range content going. Second of all, more crucially, our ears do not hear linearly. Our ears hear logarithmically, and very loud stuff makes our ears compress and distort, and it excites our brain. So we always prefer a loud sound to a quiet sound, which is one of the reasons I showed you earlier in the chat. I've got this Marshall way too loud in this room for this setup with this mic, even though it has a master volume, because I like that sound. And third of all, as Wes guessed I was going to go to, is the Fletcher-Munson curve, where our ears are more sensitive to the frequencies used by the human voice than we are to those above it and below it. So as you turn the amp down, we still hear the mids, we don't hear the highs and lows as much. And we say, well, that doesn't sound as exciting and full. That just sounds kind of nasal and small. It's because we don't hear all frequencies the same. We're still hearing the mids at a lower volume. Let's see if I can demonstrate that. Let's turn this master volume on this Marshall down to about 80 dB. I'm not going to get my phone app out to do that, but right now we're probably at 90 something dB on this thing. Now, it's not quite a fair comparison because no master volume is perfect, and that's equivalent of just barely having the damn thing on with this level of gain. So the output section is cleaning up a little bit. But all the other factors are still there. It doesn't sound exciting to us. We're hearing the mid-range more. All right, so apparently jet is in G. Never played that before, but all of a sudden it was there. So I don't think that this 70, let's rephrase your question. I don't think your AC-15 sounds worse at low volumes. I don't think this super bass sounds worse at low volumes. I think we hear more poorly at relatively low volumes because the stuff that excites us about guitar sound, we're not hearing. We're just hearing the mid-range frequencies of the human voice. T777, I'm jumping into his question. I like the clean sound of AC-15 C1 below 85 dB, but starts to sound muffled when it's cranked and you turn down the master volume. It's because the master volume in the stock amp is a cross line, and cross lines are not as good as they can be. I believe it's a cross line. See, I'm trying to remember. Some of them have some of the AC. No, it's not cross line. Or is it? Some of them, it is a cross line. So 500K cross line. So it does definitely not sound as good at low volumes as the Larmar does. But even this Larmar, if this thing had a knob on it, it would just barely be over off right now. It's not designed to make a 120 watt amp sound good at 75, 80 dB. It's designed to make it to the point where I could do it like I had it earlier, where it was loud in the room, but it wasn't as loud as it's capable of being, which means I could use it on a relatively small stage without getting thrown out of the place. In space, you can hear sounds, but only pew pew. Hey, Arnaud. I think I said I prefer the black-faced Princeton over the brown-faced one. What is my biggest gripe about it? If I had to redesign it, what would I mod? Well, they're different amps. The brown-faced Princeton is Very different circuit, and I think the Blackface Princeton is a better sounding, more versatile amp. And if I were to redesign the Brownface, I'd do the same things Leo did. Say, hey, I want something in this price range, to fit these volume, make this volume range work well for the majority of players. And he already did that. I think the Princeton, from Tweed to Brownface, has always been was always kind of an afterthought. It is the student model, above the Champ, but not much. And there wasn't a huge differentiation between the Champ and the Princeton until the '60s era, until '63 and later, because that version of the Princeton sounds better. But I would not do many mods to a Brownface. I'd just enjoy it for what it is and say, well, that's cool. I've got that. Now I need to get the 63 or later version as well. I guess 64 or later for a Princeton. Yeah, 64 or later. Stem to stern is the phrase I was looking for, Merrill, not port and starboard. I'm not posh enough for all that stuff. One person out there got that joke. Let's see. Thoughts regarding vintage sounding speaker for a 61 Vibrolux. Hey, Chango, I don't recall what's in a 61 Vibrolux. Is that 12s or 15s? Or is that 10s? Someone tell me and I'll have an answer. Hey, Diego, got it. Let's see. Yeah, the aux is cool. Reading comments back and forth to each other while I was on the last break. So I'm trying to get to the end of that. All right, and BC Electronics is going to try to temp in some axials to rule out the cap. Hey, 72 Chevy SW, how do we find parts for a 73 Fender Twin Reverb? I've got 2 or 3 videos up on my channel. I think if you search on my channel for boring, in the titles, not the descriptions, because I'm sure people have described them all as boring, but I've got some videos that are boring and even more boring on how I select parts for twins. In that video, I'm choosing some for a Marshall, some for a Super Reverb. You'll see my vendors, what my thought process is, and what kinds of things I go for. Let's see. Let's see. Yeah, man. I remember getting up way early in the morning and going to ear training class when I was in college and I was taking music classes. And get in that room at 7 in the morning and they start doing all the ear training stuff. Then all of a sudden you're like, whoa, excuse me, is that a G? Not minor, major, first, second version. That's easy to hear, but you're like, hey, you're actually, that's not just that, but G. And being able to recognize out of the ether. For those of us without perfect pitch, if you work at it hard enough, your relative pitch can get to the point where certain frequencies you can say, all right, that's G major, first inversion. Okay, and from there you can say, oh, that obviously that's an E minor, or obviously that's a B of some sort, okay. And once you get that, but you have to keep that muscle. If you don't work that muscle, flex that muscle. I don't need to do this gesture while saying these things. Unless you flex that muscle over and over again, for those of us without perfect pitch, it goes. I still have good relative pitch. And if I were to sit down with that Zeppelin recording, and again, like I used to with the needle, and oh yeah, clearly that's the wrong chord. What is he? Okay, my ears are better than they were when I were 12 in terms of I have more information with which to make decisions. I don't hear as well in terms of total frequency responses as I did when I was 12, obviously. But I know the context, so I can hear. Okay, that's augmented. But wait, No, it's not augmented. That's a major minor. That's a major seven against a different root. Okay, all that thought process, all the little breadcrumbs we have to do to decode that stuff if you don't have perfect pitch. I miss having that ability, but I don't miss waking up at 6 in the morning to go to a linoleum floored acoustic tiled classroom with a bunch of other bored 19-year-olds sitting around pretending to be awake, listening to someone do intervals on a piano. Hey, Martin. No, I have not put any of them up on Reverb or eBay yet because I've been lazy and had other things to do. But if anyone here wants to buy some of them pedals, they are available. I just I do have a new front door though, so I've gotten a lot done. I just have not done those listings, and I'm trying to decide whether to just stick them on eBay or to set up a Reverb selling account and do it that way. I think most people looking for stuff these days are on Reverb. Hey, Sergeant Grinch, I'm glad you're out of the hospital. It's great to see you, man. Hey, Brad's back. Did you get an hour and a half of sleep, Brad? Jesus Christ. Hey, Jeremy, the Crate Vintage series, like the Palominos and Vintage Club, those are really good amps. St. Louis Music, good quality PCBs, really nice WEMA caps, overall good amps. Really hard to get into some of the models in terms of just how they're put together. And the one consistent flaw that I find in those amps is that many of the grounds on the PCBs were made by having 2 bits of bus wire from ground trace to ground trace go under the screws which hold the board to the chassis. So you have 2 wires and a screw right here that just presses those down. Those bus wires break over time, or the solder joint gets stressed, or the wire bends, and so the screw no longer contacts it. So I'm not a big fan of that, but the vintage series can be great amps. They're better built than the stuff Marshall is selling for thousands now. Ted Mitch, you never heard Cotton Onto? Yeah, my wife is from Indiana. She'd never heard of that, but she cottoned on. Thanks, Cat's Music Journey. Appreciate that. Yeah, I'm pleased with where I'm at as far as the audio and visual stuff. There's stuff I still can get better yet at, and I may have to go from this 120 watt overhead to a 300 watt because there's some times when I know I could use a little bit more light than I'm able to get in here. But it's the first is the first world problems. But yeah, when I'm looking at that pedal show with their budget, 3 really nice cameras. I've got 1.5 really nice cameras. I'm doing well on the mics. But they've got many more mic pre's. I've got 2 at a time, unless I use little clip-on in addition. Like if I were doing a video of someone really playing this Marshall, I'd have both the good mics on the cab, and they and I would have these, and that'd be for the voice, because in that context, the voice is the least important part. But you can't do those radio sounds out of a DJI Mic 2. And what's up with all those people out there? Let me see if I got one here. This must be some Gen Z thing. And this is not old man ranting about the kids, but this one, I see it again and again. It drives me nuts. Maybe it's to show that they're legit or there's no artifice. But the 2 things I've noticed, if I can get this to untangle from where it's wanting to tangle. Got too many mic cables. They will have a lav mic. But they won't just put the lav mic where it goes and use the lav mic. They will sit there and talk to the little fucker. Hey, I'm using a lav mic. Or they'll use one of these and they'll tape it to a spoon. I've seen people surrounded by thousands of dollars of lights and cameras with one of these little fuckers just taped to a spoon. I'm like, get up. The whole point of this little thing right here is if I take this right here, I can stick this under my shirt, put the little magnet here, and it's barely visible. Or I can keep this in my pocket and plug the lav into it and have the lav here, or hide it under my clothes, you know. But the lav mic on a wooden spoon, Jesus Christ. But I am not going to use any of that stuff out of irony, because I have this. There are a lot of channels that try to hide the microphones. That, you know, this would be above my head and out of the shot. And I understand. I've recommended some shotgun and small diaphragm setups for people like to Zach. Ask Zach. I told him which mic style to get and where to put it. He's got his, like, if this is the top of his frame, his mic's right here, so you don't see it, because he's not selling the audio, it's just the guitar. I'm fine if you see the mic. Here's a mic. There's a mic everywhere. There's a mic. I've got mics and lights, you know. So I think I should be about the process. Like, I use my iPad to frame and control my video shots. I'll leave that shot in the shot. You'll see the iPad recording while I'm doing it. I'm not trying to make a movie here. I'm trying to welcome you into my crazy world. Hey, not including Fender, Vox, or Marshall, is there an amp that stands out as being particularly interesting to work on or has a unique design? Love me a Hiwatt. Love me this one's rare, the well-constructed magnetones. There aren't that many models. I love like a Reverber Rocket, some of the early to mid 60s Ampegs. I like Gibsons around 59 through 61, if I'm not having to fight too much conductive glue. In terms of interesting or unique, there are other amps which are just high quality. Like I said, you know, the Germinos. There's nothing unique about a Germino. It's just done. It is the thing done well. It is a logical execution. It's just a very good thing, but it's very simple and obvious. Mike Soldano built Soldano SLO or Hot Rod 50. That's a great amp. There's nothing mysterious, nothing intriguing, nothing anything about it. It does what it says on the 10, and it always does that, and it does it really, really well, and it's really easy to work on. Is it interesting? Is it unique? Well, maybe it's a sad commentary on the standards we live with, that when a Soldano or a Germino is unique in that it does not suck. The fact that it is just pure vanilla goodness, it doesn't suck at all, makes it rise to the top, just because it doesn't suck at all. So. Hey, Christina, is there an easy way to understand the difference between micro, nano, picofarads, 2 milledecimals? What are each type of resistor? Well, first of all, those are measures of capacitance, not resistance. So a farad is a unit of capacitance. So we don't deal with pure farads in any of the things we do, because that's huge. A typical filter cap, the big ones we use, will be maybe 100 microfarad, which means it is 0.1 farad, or a 47, so that's 0.047 farad, or a 22, so 0.022 farad. But we don't say 0.022 farads because that's a big number with a lot of decimals. We don't like to keep decimals straight in our head. So you have farad, and then you divide that up, you have microfarads. So I have farads, and then I have 100 microfarads or 22 microfarads. Easier to keep track. Next level below that, so instead of saying, most people do say 0.1 microfarad or 0.047 microfarad, because they just use microfarads. But then you get into decimals, and decimals are tricky because you have to remember where all the zeros go. So below micro is nano. So I will say 100 nanofarad, which is the same as a zero point 0.1 microfarad, which is the same as a 0.0001 farad. Now, that's fine if you get down to like 2.2 nanofarad or a 1 nanofarad. Now, 1 nanofarad is 0.001 microfarads. That's a lot of decimals to keep track of. So you can say 0.001 microfarads, or you can say 1 nanofarad. And 1 nanofarad is coincidentally the same as 1,000 picofarad, which is the next level down. So 500 picofarad, 500 picofarad, sorry, I'm supposed to say pico. I hate saying pico, it sounds weird. 1,000 picofarad is 1 nanofarad. 500 picofarad is half of a nanofarad. So it's just faster to say 500 nanofarad than to say 0.0005 microfarad. Did I skip millifarad? Well, I might have skipped millifarad because we don't deal with millifarads. Anyway, I don't like dealing with numbers. I certainly not dealing with the big strings of decimals. So we deal with micro, nano, pico. Most texts don't say the nano or the pico bit. I don't even like saying pico unless it's Tagayo. But I have been corrected so many times I've tried to make myself do it. It's also nice when I'm doing a schematic, I don't have to write 0.001 microfarad. I'll just write 1 N. And I know what that is, and another tech looking at that would say, okay, 1 N, 1 nanofarad, as opposed to 0.001 U. Or it's not actually a U, it's a mu, but whatever. Let's see. Jimmy Page was such a great writer, and that's the thing with Jimmy Page. I always liked Jimmy Page more than Beck and Clapton because Beck and Clapton didn't write, or they wrote a little bit. Page composed. Page didn't write. Page composed. You listen to all those things. It is just amazing how his mind worked when his mind was working. Now, I'm aware of his substance issues and all that, and that he was not, by presence in Coda, John Paul Jones was carrying everyone to a large extent. And, I'm not saying, oh, that poor guy or whatever, everyone's got their demons. And I don't know that any one of us would have handled being Jimmy Page in 1974 any better when the entire world is your oyster, et cetera, et cetera. But he made some, in retrospect, poor choices, which affected his playing for a long time. But man, when he was on, I don't think any guitarist in rock with the close second of Hendrix has come close to his compositional abilities. And I love the late Zepp stuff too. And Page rose to the occasion from time to time. Well, speaking of Achilles' Last Stand, but John Paul Jones was just amazing at that time period. But I don't care if Page was sloppy. I like his sloppy playing. I like it. It has a good attitude. It has that same attitude as that second solo of Hound Dog from Scotty Moore I mentioned last week. But I don't think rock and roll all needs to be Steely Dan. And there's nothing wrong with Steely Dan. I love that too. But precision is highly overrated. I'd rather have someone do great, big, literal, impressionistic broad strokes or clumps of paints, doing something new like Page was constantly doing, than someone doing something precisely perfectly every time that other people had already done or that you expected it to hear. No, the revenue doesn't come just from ads. The revenue comes from views and clicks and a whole bunch of other stuff. Whether or not someone has ads or not, I don't get penalized as far as I know from them having ad blockers and stuff. But I don't know what the shifting criteria is. Oh, I miss Milli Nano. Yeah, I forgot about Nano, which sounds like the world's worst name for a baby girl. Milli Nano. I forgot because we don't use it. So Milli, then Micro, then Nano, then Pico. So add 3 zeros to all the zeros I already gave you. Jesus Christ. So I told you I wasn't good with numbers. See, Chango, that's how they get you. The brown face stuff, man, what you want is like a concert or pro with a harmonic trim and then a deluxe with that raunch. Let's see. Thanks, J.E. Armstrong. I appreciate that. Always glad to be of some kind of help. Hey, Christina, I drained one of the main power caps. Does it drain all the caps, or do you need to drain each one separately? Well, if the amp's in play rather than the standby, I don't know which amp you have. It depends. This Marshall, the standby, switches the AC from the HT secondaries of the transformer. So all these caps are always tied together, regardless of the position of the switch. So draining one cap drains them all. In most Fenders, the standby interrupts between the reservoir node and the screen node. So if you have the amp in standby mode, so the standby switch is down, and you drain the reservoir cap, the other caps are not going to be drained through that. So you have to have the amp out of standby for that to work. Some amps don't have standby, in which case all the caps are tied together. In general, in a healthy amp, if it's not separated by standby or some other mode, and confirm that with a meter, it's pretty easy to do. When you drain one B plus node, any of the filter cap stages, the others will drain at the same time. But you always, always, always must confirm this, because what if something's wrong or a wire is broken? And so I thought I drained all these caps, but this cap was still holding 400 volts, and that's how I burnt a hole in my finger, or that's how my heart went out. Takes 2 seconds to double check. Thank you, Cameron. I appreciate that. I've really been trying very hard. I think I take 2 steps forward and 1 step back. I'll get this better, and then I see this other thing that needs to be improved. And I had some issues on the last video on this. I had some shadows that were too dark because I need to get another big light for over there. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to get a really nice big light for up there, and then that light's going to be a light over there, so I can eliminate or at least I don't want to eliminate, but I will control the shadows. So I have that urge all the time, Meryl, but it never works. Could I explain why ABY pedals sound like crap on some amps and others less crappy? Also, what I'm doing with these would like to run 2 amps. Well, as Wes says, it could be a polarity issue. Amps could be out of phase with each other if you're using both at once. A high quality ABY pedal will typically have a polarity switch on the B output, so you can make them have the same polarity. And be aware that if you're going, say, if I plugged into this and then into the reverb channel of this super reverb, I may be in phase. But then I plug into this and then the normal channel of that super reverb, or the normal channel and the reverb channel of the super reverb are out of phase with each other, so I'd have to hit the button when using that channel, but not when using that channel. Or you could have 2 deluxe reverbs, and hey, for some reason I'm using the reverb channel on both amps. For this one, I've got to invert the polarity. This other one I don't. It means the speakers are wired differently in those 2 deluxe reverbs, because the speakers are a way of inverting that. It could also be that if you're using a passive load box, you are without a buffer either in the ABY box or before the ABY box. Your pickups are being loaded down by being plugged into too many inputs at once, and so instead of having 1 meg on there, you got 500K, or depending on the amp, say something's got a 470K input resistance, then and you get 1 meg, you're down to 330K, and it just makes everything sound a little bit dark, and It's harder to get a treble response, and you may even have a drop in level. There are a lot of variables. Without knowing what amps you have and what ABY pedal you have, I don't know. But I don't think you'd have that with one of the active radials. Going on vacation to Munich, do I have any food recommendations? Well, I've not been to Munich. Brad has. I've been to Vienna, but I've not been to Munich. I will say that the Bavarian beer that I enjoyed quite a bit when I was in Vienna is called Edelstoff. I would recommend Edelstoff, but I have not tried the other Bavarian beers, so there may be something better. And one of my favorite dishes in the world is called Stelze in Vienna, but I believe in Munich and the rest of Germany it's called Schweinsachse, which is a roasted, boiled and roasted pork hock or pork knuckle, which is just phenomenal with some kraut and some horseradish and some taters. Taters. So I found out because I had seen this dish when we were planning our trip, and I wanted to order it, and the Austrians don't call it Schweinsachse. They call it Stelze. So when I asked if they had that, they looked at me kind of crazy, like, "Well, I could go cut, yeah, I go cut the end of this pork leg off for you." Well, no, that's not that thing. So it's funny how to the rest of the world, Austria and Germany are interchangeable, and very much not when you're there. Very much not when you're there. So if I've ever done that to any of my Austrian or German followers, I apologize. It was unintentional, and I try to educate myself more as I go on. So I am equally open to Schweinsachse as I am to Stelze. And if anyone wants to share, I'll be right here. I'm actually making some ribs for tonight, but just oven ribs. I don't have time to fire up the grill. I have to be here with you guys. I can't go mind the grill for 8 hours. Speaking of such things, we're going to take the second of 2 intermissions. Everyone can stretch their legs, get a beer, get a Schweinsachse, get a brat, whatever you got. And Brad knows much more about Munich than I do, so I'm sure he'll be glad to educate you from his own experience. And Pistor and a lot of our European guys here have probably been there much more. So you're in good hands, just not mine for the next 7 minutes. Let's see if the audio's gone weird. Nope. For those of you who were here last Saturday when everything went to hell, I have not been able to find what conditions are necessary for that to happen. And I even set this up so I could make sure I wasn't subjecting you to that awfulness. And because I'm on it, it's gone. So anyway, this is the same amp, the same settings. I turned the master back up to where it was, or roughly to where it was. I don't have a knob on there. And this is the same amp with a Tele versus a 335. Out of practice with my thumb. So yeah, it needs a little bit of tweaking on the treble and bass and all that stuff to go between the two, but let's hear that bass channel. Marshall, super lead, loud, clean. Wish I had some of them teleslingers here today to show you what this thing can really sound like. Whoa, the sun is out and it is blasting back there. Got a big old blown out spot, just a second. I'm not egocentric, but I want to be the brightest thing in any room. At least on my channel. All right, turning those plugins back off. Still not fucked up. Okay, great. All right, while I was taking a break, you guys were telling each other about how great German food was and how bad German food was. And all I got to say is my family is Scots-German, and I grew up eating a lot of German food, both Bavarian and Hanoverian influences. And I'm very glad because we've had some really great food, very unique to our family and that experience. And I think it's also important to note that given our Scots-German background, we kept the German food and the Scottish foreign policy. You never want to reverse those. Let's see. What do I do with my vintage tubes that are microphonic? I might use them in a phase inverter or someplace where they're not microphonic. I will use them happily in a vibrato circuit where there's not in the audio path, so microphonics don't matter. Or I'll use them for testing if the tube is too microphonic for use for playing, but still doesn't have any big noise issues or hum issues. Like if I have an old RCA 7025, that's a nice tube usually. If it's microphonic, so be it. I'll put in an amp just to say, hey, all that hum went away. It's not in the amp, it was the tube. So they're useful, but I would not typically use one to play with unless I was putting it in a phase inverter where it's not prone to that, or certainly in V5 of a AB763 where there's no audio. All right, so Chengo, you got a 91 Vibrolux. I thought you said a 61 Vibrolux earlier. I might have misread. Of the Fender-approved 12-inch speakers, my four favorites on the market, sir. Four. ET65, G12C from Warehouse, Creamback 65 from Celestion, and I really like that Alessandro SEA 64 an awful lot. They're very different sounding speakers, all four of which are great choices, but they do different things. And again, it's nice to have a collection. As to what's vintage, none of them sound like what would have been in a 61 Vibrolux, because those probably would have been in Oxford, which is kind of nasal and limited. You might be better off with a, well, maybe Jensen's got some reissue that's close to that today, but Oxfords tend to be kind of boxy. I guess from a certain point of view, the Alessandro would cover that, but be better. The Alessandro is, the marketing says C12N, but to me they sound like an improved Utah, which is also kind of an improved Oxford. Hey, Jack Bird, can one truly use a Princeton for live work without monitoring? Is it really underpowered? It depends on the stage. An awful lot of guys in town, not just now, but forever, have used a Princeton on stage. It depends on how loud your drummer is. If that is always the case for stage volume. You need to sit comfortably with your drummer. Now, if you got a hard hitter, a loud drummer with big drums, you might need to either monitor it or to use something else. If you got a guy playing an old Rogers kit with a 20 or 18-inch kick, and he's not hitting the hell out of things, and he's got some 2As instead of some 5Bs or whatever, you might be fine. If it's a jazz gig and they got brushes, you're set with a Princeton. But I don't know what your stage is like. I think that Princeton is one of the great amps for live use. Most of the pros in town have a Princeton for small gigs, a deluxe reverb for most gigs, and a super reverb for if they do an outdoor gig or they really need to compete with something else. And, that may vary from town to town. Memphis is kind of old school. That's why we're here. We invented big chunks of the school, between Memphis and Chicago and New Orleans. They can argue all day, but a big chunk of it came from here. And so it may be old school, but it's our school. Lalies are good too. Lalies are just a bit overpriced, I think, but they are beautiful things. Oh man, live transcribed a 6-part choral piece. Well, I think you're better than I ever was, Wes. I don't think there's any surprise there, but isn't it just nice to be in that world? You were farther in that world for longer than I was, but it little snippets of it come back to me. I misheard where that diminished chord was, and I forgot there's a major 7 on the D on the paging. If I were to listen to the record and play along with it, I'd give that right back. But most stuff that's on the radio, I can not only tell you what the chord sequence is, I can tell you what the key is half the time. If they have not done some weird thing where they slowed it down a quarter step, in which case it just always, that's not an A, that's not an A flat. What the hell is that? It drives me nuts. I don't have perfect pitch, but my pitch is relative enough that some of those stuff on the radio songs sound like a cartoon mother-in-law. Another thumbnail face for you guys. I'm so tired of Melodyne, auto-tune, and all that stuff. Oh man, I used to do that as a party trick. I'd say I'd name a song and I'd play it. I don't have to. I've never tried to play it before. But that was back when I knew the songs that were on the radio. I think I checked out about 2012. I try to listen to the current stuff, and it's boring. It's not. It's just boring, and it's cyclical. It'll get good again. It will, and 5 years from now, I may be jamming to stuff that's top 10 of Spotify or whatever people listen to in 5 years. But right now, we're in a period that I equivalent to about 60 through 63 in America, where all the Bobby V's and just generic safe stuff where Pat Boone was a megastar. It's just boring stuff that was very easy to do. And we're in a boring, easy listening pop period, and hopefully we'll have something that shakes it up and I can get interested in it again. I'm sure I'm not the only person here who could do that. Most of the chord changes on in pop songs for the last 20 years have been the same ones. So. All right, trying to get caught up to where we're at. Still talking. I don't have anything in the works on some guests, but I'm going to have some guests coming in pretty soon, Meryl, because I can't continue just being me. Hey, Hal, good to see you. I've bin it, or I'll give it back to the owner, because that cap's been subjected to so much AC, more AC than it's rated for. I wouldn't rely on it. But if someone else wants to take their chance, it's up to them. Hey Brett, I tried doing a While I Work live stream once, and I would either get no work done, or because I would just be replying to comments, or I'd be working and miss half the. I can't split the streams like that. Brad's quite good at that. I can either work or I can talk like this. I can't do both. Let's see. Hot take: Brad's not a big fan of the SLO 100 tone. Oh, I think they sound a lot better if you take that 1 nanofarad cap off the volume pot. And if you turn it up so it saturates too much, yeah, you can lose the pick attack. You don't have to love the way the SLO sounds to love the way the SLO is built. I mean, I'm not telling Brad anything he doesn't know. I would not choose to own an SLO because I would rarely use it. I like the Marshall thing. I think Brad literally just said the same thing. But in terms of admiring the design and the build, my God, it's the good design that launched 1,000 ships, or at least 2 really bad copies, like the 5150 and the dual rectifier are bad copies of the SLO. And it's one of the most popular circuits of the past 30 years, 40 years. But only Mike got it right, because Mike said, hey, to do this right, we need to do this, this, and this. And someone else said, that would cost way too much. Let's just see what we can do for cheap. And you get what you pay for. Let's see. Yeah, Rooster's Beak. Pico de Gallo. Rooster Beak. I actually don't like Pico de Gallo. I cannot stand cilantro. But, so I say it a lot, as in, no Pico de Gallo, por favor. And they'll look at me like I'm crazy, but I can't do the cilantro. It's just like pouring Dawn detergent on your food. Yeah, Achilles' Last Stand is just amazing. Yeah, Page and many others dated way too young. It was a bad time for society, and I'm not condoning and I'm not excusing, but I'm just gonna go. I'm gonna judge the artist on the art and not on the artist. Picasso's work is quite enjoyable. Apparently, he's a horrible human being. Humor, art. Let's see. Hey, Christina, how do you look at a schematic for pedal, then look at a PCB and put the two together without a layout sheet? Or is that even possible for a novice? How to answer this? How do you tie your shoes? I mean, there are things that we know how to do that we can't necessarily break down into component levels and tell someone. I can show you how to tie your shoes, but I'm not sure if my written instructions would end up with anything that you'd want. Some things I do without being able to analyze how I do it, and I think that's kind of in that camp. Other people are more methodical and can tell you, oh, this is exactly how I do it. And I have not, I've done it so many times, I don't think about it anymore. And it sounds like either I'm being egocentric or I'm dodging the question. I was talking to Brad yesterday about how he found the problem with the tone master. And I found the same problem, but we found them in very different ways. He was measuring voltages and tracing things out and following circuits and signals and finding when a voltage was acting up. And I just said, well, what's likely to get hot? Let me sniff around. I'm literally picking things up and smelling. Oh, I don't see or smell anything in these areas. What's left? Oh, there's this great big heat sink in the middle. Let me look underneath that, because that's going to be a place that gets hot. And what's underneath that? Okay, one more thing. What's under that? Oh, there it is. I can see it. So mine is scientific. His is scientific. Mine is eminently justifiable, but mine seems less scientific at first glance. Mine is like, okay, let me look at everything, smell everything, follow the heat. His was, let's figure out from a circuit perspective and how voltage should behave perspective. We got to the same place. And if my way had not worked, his way would have been the next thing I did. Because sometimes you've got to do the math. I just try to avoid math when my nose will do the same job. So I'm not the person to ask how to do certain things that I'm not quite sure. Hey, thanks, cats. Well, when we do cats, then I'll reprimand Brad. Hey, thank you so much. Epiphany today, wiring a shunt tone pot for a telly. Couldn't understand why it works. All of this is about guiding AC and filtering what we don't need to ground, right? Naive, but for a software guy, this is huge. Well, it's actually for a simple passive filter, is complex. So you have a pickup. Let's say that the pickup has 6K of DC resistance. Now, the pickup is an inductor, so it gets a little more complicated than we're going to get into, but we're just going to look at it as a resistor. Let's pretend it's not an inductor as well. Let's pretend that pickup is just a 6K resistor. And that 6K resistor is in parallel with, let's say it's a Fender, with a 250K volume pot. All right, so you got 6K in parallel with 250K. Let's call that 5.8K. I don't know what the math really works out to. 5.5K. Let's call it 5.5K. And then that is in parallel with the pickup, with the pot, the volume pot, with the grid leak of the amp, which is 1 meg. That's also in parallel. So it takes us down to maybe 5.2K. From 6K to 5.5K to 5.2K. And the impedance of the tube itself is so large that we're just going to ignore it. So we got 1 meg, 250K, 6K, all that in parallel. We've got about 5.2K. And now we put a capacitor in series with a 250K pot to ground, and we use 100, let's say, use 100 nanofarad cap. Well, as you turn that pot, as a pot is turned up, that 250K is between the 5.2K and ground, and 250K is a lot larger than 5.2K. So there's no reason for the signal to go through that capacitor, through that 250K resistor. But as soon as that pot is turned down, and we're going to go from 10 to 0, then all of a sudden that pot's out of the way because it's wired as a variable resistor. So now we have a 100 nanofarad cap in parallel with a 5.2K resistance. And that's one factor in figuring out the filter, because a capacitor in parallel with a resistor, it's the same way we do it with a cathode bypass cap. You're going to be dumping some frequencies that are going to want to go to ground. Other frequencies are not going to want to go to ground. It gets more complicated because the pickup is actually an inductor as well. And we're not going to even speculate on what the math on that is. So people often say, well, why does this work, or why does this doesn't work? At its core, that's what it is. You have a pickup, which has its resistance. You have a volume pot, and the input of an amp has a resistance. Those are all in parallel with each other, and then you have a capacitance across that. So you can say, let's call it 5.2K. You can just do the simple math just for relative changes. If I do that against 100 nanofarad, okay, it's going to roll off everything above 200 hertz. If I do that to a 22 nanofarad, it's going to roll everything above 700 hertz off, whatever the math is. I'm just throwing numbers out there. That's a good way to wrap your head around it without getting to the actual inductance and peak, resonance peaks that pickups actually have when they have that load, because pickups are not resistors. They don't behave like resistors. But in terms of from space view, over a very broad understanding, just treat it like a resistor while you do your basic math. Thank you very much for the super chat. All I know is coffee in Germany sucks. Well, I've not had any coffee in Germany. I will say that the coffee in Vienna was very, very good. I know you're pro-Australian coffee, and if I ever make it there, I'll test your thesis. The coffee in Florence, in Italy, was fantastic. The coffee in Lisbon was fantastic. Some of the coffee in London was fantastic. Some of it was not, but they have American-style coffee shops now. And in Paris, they have those as well, but I did not try any. And the coffee served in the various cafes in Paris was awful, just terrible. So Vienna, which seems to have originated it in the West at least, still is doing quite well with the coffee. And given how much Germany tries to stay very modern and up with things, I'm sure that if you were to go to one of the larger cities, particularly Frankfurt, you would find not only Viennese-style cafes, but you'd also find American-style, including the good drip-style stuff. They have that in Paris. I just did not have time to try that. I did find that in England. I also found some very bad coffee in England. You think the bass channel will be messy with humbuckers? Let's try it. Let's test that theory. I've not had acceptable coffee anywhere but Australia, to be honest. I'm curious. Do you think if I were to order some coffee from Australia, it would hold up across the pond, or would I'd have to get it in Perth for it to count? I'm gonna push these problematic buttons again. Hopefully it doesn't go to hell. Still good? Still good. All right. Now that I'm all set up and ready to stop the problem, the problem's gone, of course. All right, here's the same channel, same settings on the bass channel. You guys remember the beginning of the stream where I said that this thing's a little bit flubby in the very lows because I need to bring the high pass from like 3 hertz up to about 40 hertz? That's some of what I'm talking about right there. How's that go? Still has a little bit of that. Still a little bit of that that I want to dial out of the very lows. So it's got some potential, but it definitely needs to have the very lowest stuff dialed out. All right, still not there. I did turn the bass knob down on this after I got started there, Dustin. It was probably on like one. Bukavac's not here. If he were here, he could set the knobs however he wanted. But I was not I didn't want to get distracted by finding the perfect thing for this one little section of live stream. But still, even the bass wrist, let's go step back and take a longer view. The tone stack of a Marshall or a Bassman can only do so much because it doesn't have that much impact over the overall low end. That sounds weird. It can only remove so much. There's still quite a bit. So it's the same way you can have other Marshalls that just don't seem to have much low end at all. And the knob just controls whether it's kind of soft in the bass or not. But you add a resonance control and you can get that kind of dial back in, that get that low end thump that people think they want. It's usually not that useful in a band mix, as I'm sure Dustin agrees with me. But the low end response on a Marshall really should be considered low mids than lows in most Marshalls. And so when I get the output section dialed in a little bit nicer, I think then that lower mid control that says bass will be a fun thing. But I don't think it's sounding bad now with humbuckers, at least not with these humbuckers. I love a Plexi, a 59, an 87, a 62. A J-Team 45 as a clean amp. Same for a 58 Bassman, 59 Bassman. It is a beautiful clean sound that's capable of doing a lot more, and especially since you can have it turned up and then clean it down, and have it cranked, have it be really loud, turn the volume on your guitar down, almost instant clean sound. Hey, Mr. Anderson. Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Best Memphis ribs, Rendezvous, Blue City Cafe, or neither? Neither. Of the two, Blue City Cafe is a tourist trap. Don't go there. Rendezvous is really good if you go on a Tuesday or Wednesday. If you go on a Friday or Saturday, they have way too many people. They're trying to serve too many people once, and odds are the ribs that you get will have been sitting wrapped in foil under a heat lamp. Whereas if you get them on a Tuesday, they're going to be really good, but the Rendezvous ribs are very unlike Memphis barbecue. It's a Greek style. I like Rendezvous ribs. I like the slaw is a bit odd for those not used to mustard slaw. But the best ribs in town I have found consistently are Cozy Corner, which is not far from downtown. And second to that, the barbecue shop on Madison. Now, the barbecue shop has much more regular hours and never runs out of ribs. Cozy Corner is a small ad hoc kind of family-run place, and sometimes you get there at 7 o'clock at night and they sold out of ribs, and that's it. But they're really damn good. But barbecue, if Cozy Corners is closed or out of ribs, it's about 2.5 miles from there, short drive to the barbecue shop on Madison, which are quite nice. But don't eat at Blue City Cafe. That's like going to a city and going to Hard Rock Cafe or something, Do I ever work on tube studio gear? Yeah, I've had a few things, including a few things on the channel. I had some Universal Audio stuff. Had a bunch of old stuff, but it's been a while since I had much on there. Just not a lot of it out there. Everyone's using plugins these days. What was my last concert? Billy Joel and Sting in St. Louis last September. Yeah, last September. And Billy Joel was awesome, and Sting was phoning it in. But I had 11th row, and my wife was very, very, very happy to be there. And I was very disappointed because I was a big fan of Sting and the Police. And man, there are certain songs you just cannot do a fifth down. Anyway, any speaker recommendations for a 65 blackface super reverb? Motor Amp says, or asks. Yeah, well, if at all possible, and it's in your budget, 4 reconed, good condition CTS Alnico 10s, because that is the best sound for a super reverb, and it is one of the best sounds for any amp, and no other 10-inch Alnico comes close to those because they have a 1.5-inch voice coil. Most 10-inch Alnicos have a 1-inch voice coil. But if that is not in the budget, because it can be quite expensive to procure those and then have them reconed and all that, then I would suggest that you'd probably be very happy with 4 Warehouse G10Cs. That's one that I use a lot. Or 4 the Eminence Alessandro SA6410s. Those would be great sounding ceramic alternatives, which would be much better than the Oxfords, which were the ceramic option in a super reverb. But good condition 10-inch Alnicos are the best option for that amp, in my always humble opinion. Brad's trying to get me to talk about cameras. Nice try. Resisting the urge. Have I ever seen a Park Model 1210 rock head, 100 watt mid-70s head? No, I have not, Gringo Pig. The only Park that I've had in was that Park 150 about 5 years ago. Speaking of Billy Joel, it belongs to his bassist. Wonderful guy. Who occasionally joins us on these streams, but I don't want to make him stand out. But I've not had the 1210 rock heads. Sorry, but it's good to see you, Gringo. I'm way behind in the chat. Let's see. What precautions do I take in case an amp pops or makes noise when I have the volume up high for testing? Well, I try to test everything at relatively low volume first, and just wiggle all the tubes and stuff. But sometimes things just make noise, and I haven't died yet. Let's see. Don't call Priest. They're just going to argue about who has the worst Marshall sound. Let's see. Hey, Eric Oscar Guitar from Finland. Nice. Getting a Blues Deluxe for free. Okay. Cabin speaker water damage. Chassis barely above water level. Mold allergy precautions aside. Tips for checks and first power up. Thanks. Thank you very much. Well, Blues Deluxes are tricky, especially with water damage and all that stuff. I've got several videos on the Blues Deluxe, the Blues DeVille, the Hot Rod Deluxe, and the Hot Rod DeVille on my channel, all in a playlist called Hot Rods and Blues. It also covers Blues Juniors. And I have several videos in there to show what the most common problems in all of those are. The Blues Deluxe is, along with the Hot Rod Deluxe, the most problematic of the series. The DeVilles did not do as poor a job of doing a low voltage supply as the Hot Rods did. But with some foresight careful planning, you can make that amp last another 20 years and get some great music out of it. And I hope that you're able to. But look for my Hot Rods and Blues playlist, and the answer will be there in many, many videos. Thank you for joining us. Thanks, Martin. I appreciate you guys joining me, especially, people join me from Scotland and Finland and, places that most Americans don't even know where are on the map. It means a lot to me. Hey, Colby Jack, I see you there. I'll get to you just a minute. Thank you, sir. Einen Cappuccino mit einem extra Shot, bitte. What was it that I was, Grosse Brana in Austria. I was getting the Grosse Branas. How this magic works without ifs, elses. Yeah, coming from software background. Yeah. Well, I think coming from a software background, I have always found the way amplifiers work and the way pedals work to be very similar to an if then else. Not in terms of a binary on-off state kind of thing, but it's just if you understand the whole system, it's really easy usually pretty easy to narrow down. Hey, if it's exhibiting this failure behavior, it has to be this or this, and here's how to test that. So I do have a constant if then else chart in my head, but it's hard to articulate to others. But yeah, the nice thing about learning any of these things is that there are those clicks, those light bulbs where, oh, that's why that works. And then you can say, well, I understand that now. It makes it much easier for understand this next thing. So, but resistive capacitive network filters are very interesting, whether single pole or multi-pole. So look into that next if you want to have your mind go ping. Well, it depends on where you go, I'm sure. Well, maybe not compared to the Danes. If your weather would allow, you'd probably have your own coffee fields by now. But in comparison to Tennessee, Germany's really advanced. And poor Merrill down there outside of Coldwater. Yeah. Let's see. Let's see. Yeah, I don't play it very often, because if I do that in one of the playing videos, it'll get demonetized, and I may still get demonetized for playing that there. But yeah, it is like the Foo Fighters riff, but it is fun to play once you remember how it goes. I used to do that song on acoustic a lot. Again, the timing down for the chorus is such a bitch. The pre-chorus on that, you got to really. Dave Grohl is just a masterful drummer, and that comes across in his guitar parts. It's some of his decisions. You have to be a great drummer to play that stuff on guitar. I don't have any thoughts on Kwame resistors. I don't have pros, cons, negatives, positive. This is the first I've heard of such a thing as a Kwame resistor. JD is going after the salmon. Good luck. Good luck to you, sir. Oh man, Nikki got so mad at me the other day. She has a coffee grinder. It's a Mr. Coffee grinder. And we're looking at the coffee prices in the store and debating whether to spend $16 for Maxwell House or $15 for Folgers. I ended up getting some $10 Kroger branded coffee. Just fuck it. I just need some caffeine. And with the prices the way they are, I don't need to spend 60% more just to wake up in the morning. But she said, well, we could get some of these whole beans. I've got a grinder. And I said, well, yeah, but we don't have a good grinder. And she's got so mad at me. I said, well, here's the thing, sweetheart. If we spend the money on really good coffee beans and then put them into a Mr. Coffee grinder, it's going to come out tasting about the same as if we just get the Folgers or the Kroger brands pre-ground stuff. You have to have a really nice grinder to get the most out of roast beans. And she just thought I was being a snob. I'm like, I'm not being a snob. I mean, fuck it. I'll drink the Kroger stuff. Thanks, Mr. T. Because that's what I can afford this week. And I won't like it, but I'll drink it without complaining, without being a snob. But I don't want to waste some expensive beans on a Mr. Coffee grinder. So, I'm like, snobbery or science? Science. Let's see, where were we? Hey, J.E. Harley Benton tube amps are not very expensive. They are not worth it. I don't have any thoughts about. I don't have any positive thoughts on them. They're absolute garbage. With the 230 volt power being an issue in the U.S., yes, absolutely, you'd have to use a $80 step-up transformer to use your $80 amp, which will fail within a year or two. They're garbage. Don't waste your money on them. There's certain things in this life that aren't worth the box they come in, and Harley Benton tube amps specifically, let alone their guitars, they're junk. I'm sorry to say that. They're junk. Synergy amps, on the other hand, are not junk, but I've not tried any of them. I know several of the designers involved in that project, and they all do great work, and I have no reason to think that they're not fantastic, but I have not had a Synergy amp in on the bench. Let's see here. Hey, Jolly Bobby Ogre. Thank you for being here again. Bought an amazing Friedman vintage tea. Do I have any tone tips for a Tele-style guitar with P90 and LP-style controls? By the way, what's special at barbecues? Memphis Barbecue. I don't know what about tone tips for a Tele-style guitar with P90 LP-style controls. I mean, I've played them, but if you bought a Friedman, contact Dave. He'll tell you what to do, or just try it. And when you find stuff that doesn't sound good, don't do that, and do the stuff that sounds good. What's special about Memphis Barbecue? Well, first of all, dry ribs. Dry rub ribs, not wet, not glazed. The rub needs to have a little bit of heat to it. So you'll find, in addition to brown sugar and paprika and stuff, the other places usually, you find a lot of mustard. You'll find a lot of garlic powder. Sometimes you'll find some cayenne. And you gotta cook them really slow for a really long time. And you sauce them at the table, and you trust the smoke and the rub, and letting the rub be on there for a long time before they even go near the coals. By coals, it can be charcoal. Where I grew up, just west of here, and it's in a lot of places, pit barbecue meant hickory smoke. That's a big part of it. And a lot of Memphis style sauce is sweeter than I like. I grew up in northeastern Arkansas. I grew up having a vinegar-based sauce because they had a lot of German immigrants in northeastern Arkansas, including parts of my family. So it was more towards the vinegar. It's still a thick sauce with vinegar and cumin, whereas Memphis tends to be a little bit more towards the brown sugar and molasses side. But the barbecue underneath that is fantastic, and I can just skip or use light amounts of the sauce. Not as sweet as Kansas City style. Kansas style is sweeter than Memphis style, but they're not too dissimilar. Now, there's some places like a barbecue shop that does a spicier sauce. You know, if you come to Memphis, unless you go to Central Barbecue, you're guaranteed to have good barbecue. Just don't go to Central. That's the most popular, most recommended place. Their stuff is garbage. They don't even do the right ribs. They do baby back instead of St. Louis style spare ribs, and they don't get any smoke penetration. And their meat's always dry, and their sauces suck, and their sides are just okay. So any place in Memphis that sells barbecue, except for Central Barbecue, you'll have your mind blown. And if you like Central, you don't like barbecue. Let's see. Sorry to be so vague on the Friedman P90 equipped telly. There's 2 pickups, there's 4 knobs, there's not much. There aren't that many variables. Just have fun with it. If you find something you like, remember that. If you find something you don't like, don't do that. Doc, it hurts when I do this. Thank you so much, man. What pedals am I looking at selling? What's the best idea for the 30 to 40 tubes that you have unsure if they work or not? In terms of whether your tubes work or not, in order to sell them, you should take them to someone with a tube tester and sort them out and see if you can test them and match them. In which case, you might have something sellable. But if they're unknown, you're going to get pennies on the dollar potentially. As far as the pedals go, they're still here because I've not done anything with them since last time. I've got an original Strymon Flint, which is a great pedal for reverb and vibrato. Really nice pedal. I've got a H&K Red Box speaker simulator back when this was the tits. I probably won't get anything for it today, but someone might want it. It might be useful to a live guy as just a little DI to keep around if someone's amp goes out. Original Polytune, great tuner, but I've got the smaller version on my board. I don't need 2. One of the newer TC Flashbacks, great pedal, bought it. At the same time, I got the HX Stomp, and I've never used this other than like for 3 days. Still has the little rubber feet on the back instead of the Velcro everything else has got. Great shape. Version 1 of the Ditto, which is a great little looper. And I thought I'd lost this or someone had stolen it, but it was tucked in the back of an amp that was here waiting for a speaker recall. So I found it like 8 months later when the speakers were finally reunited with it. So in the meantime, since I thought I lost it, I bought a second one, and I got the Ditto Plus, and so now I've got a Ditto sitting around not being used. Basically, I want to sell these and get some lenses, and then I had some Mojotone Quiet Coil Tele pickups. Never been used because I went back to regular ones, and I've got some bare knuckle Stormy Monday, about 6.5K or 6K low output Stormy Mondays that I ordered, thinking I was going to put them in at 335, and in the meantime I fell in love with the MHS pickups in the 335 and never installed the bare knuckles. So my plan is to move these things and I'm not using, let someone else get some use out of them, and let me get some lenses. All right, let's see. Hey, produced by Info. First build for gorgeous cleans. Well, if you already built a whole bunch of studio gear and want gorgeous cleans, I would buy a deluxe reverb kit from Mojotone or from StewMac. It's the same kit. They have a partnership. It's the same components. It depends on which one's in stock, or if you're already a StewMac membership, for the StewMac you'll get free shipping or whatever, or shipping discount. Otherwise, just get them from Mojotone. And if even if that doesn't end up being your ultimate clean app, it's a great way to learn because, hey, if you do a good job and then you want to build a twin, which is a louder, cleaner app, you'll be able to sell the deluxe or have it as a secondary thing. But the cleans out of a deluxe reverb are one of the prettiest things ever. And that's why I'd suggest building, because it's the core concept of any of the Fender stuff, but it's scaled down a little bit. It's less expensive to get into the game. Hey, the Jameson up there in Nashville. And Norway, yeah, great. Hey, Jack Bird. South Norway. I assume those in northern Norway are frozen by now. What's the best way to mount new electrolytic caps in a Gibson GA20 Minuteman? Thank you. Hey, Sean. I'm not sure. I've had various Gibsons. I don't remember them working on a Minuteman. The Gibsons, they'll often have little screws or rivets holding can clamps, and they have those stick of dynamite caps everywhere. I try to get all those out first, and I see where my real estate is. And if it's got a terminal board, sometimes I can take a hey, Victor, I'll talk to you in just a second. If it's got a terminal board and it has space, and say that the red was here, going from this terminal to the dynamite cap, and then went to ground somewhere else, but here's where that red connected, and here's a ground. I can put a little axial or radial cap right there, mounted on the board, and then use a little bit of silicone to hold it to the chassis. Or sometimes I'll install some little terminal strips, like some 3 to 4 contact point terminal strips in the amp where an old cap was mounted, and that lets me use some modern radials or axials, and then run wires to the board. Whatever is going to be mechanically reliable and safe, and give me I'm always trying to think about the next guy or girl 20 years from now who has to replace everything I'm doing. And I want to make sure that they're going to think, whoever did this was my friend. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Hey, that 1K resistor got a little toasty. I changed it. It took 1 minute. So those are my thought processes, but I'm not familiar enough with the Minuteman. Let's see. I'm trying to get caught up before we end everything. Yeah, the hot rods and the blues and the other deluxes and DeVilles can sound really great, Eric Oscar, but they try so hard to catch on fire. So if you can keep it from catching on fire and you don't use the nasty, dirty channel, then you have the wonderful clean channel. So there you go. Just remember that it's got a 25K mids resistor, so if you want it to sound more like a blackface, turn that down to like 9 o'clock, and you'll be closer to what the old ones were. Oh, hey, Ted, I tried the Riken Ohm a long time ago. Way overpriced metal film Japanese resistors, and there's no point in using them in a guitar amplifier because all the benefits of a 0.5% tolerance resistor go out the window when the tubes introduce more variation than anything else, and we actually like a little bit of variation. It's money spent in the wrong place. But then again, no one ever got rich selling metronomes. I have not had a Dr. Z Cure amp come in. I'm a big fan of most Dr. Z amps with a few caveats. Look at my videos on Dr. Z's. There's some things in their build that I think could be made a little bit better. But most of the issues I have with their amps are the reverb models, and I believe the Cure is sans reverb. I have not heard the tube store is not shipping tubes. I probably got an email as well. Is shipping tubes in general, or is that shipping tubes to us? Because we're very special right now. American exceptionalism. Careful what you ask for. Any place you get barbecue in Memphis is just as good as the best places in Nashville. At least that's the Jameson's firsthand experience. Mine too. And unless y'all have a Gus's now, your fried chicken ain't nothing. That whole Nashville hot chicken craze. We got a Hattie B's here. It's bad chicken. The chicken itself is rubbery, and I don't care about the hot sauce. But if y'all got a Gus's, you got a place to get fried chicken. Plus, Nashville and Memphis have got so many little black-owned soul food restaurants. At least Nashville has had. I don't know if anyone can afford to pay the leases in Nashville now to run a little restaurant out of, but yeah. Nashville has always been, to me, an oddity. It's that culture, and I love Nashville. I loved Nashville before it became Nash Vegas full-time 24/7. I mean, my God, some of those 2-lane roads that it should be 4-lane highways now, 6-lane highways now. But culturally, it's always been much closer to Kentucky. And Memphis is the cultural capital of Mississippi, Very different worlds. How can a 2x12 AX7 Synergy preamp be equivalent to a 5-tube preamp in a head? Well, contact Synergy and ask them. I don't know because I have not looked at the Synergy thing, but there are ways around a whole bunch of stuff, especially if the Synergy, I imagine the Synergy stuff has a fixed phase inverter kind of sweet thing. Sorry, read a word on screen. Phase inverter, so that takes one of the stages out. Hey, Jameson, I'm glad you have a Gus's. Yeah, but the trouble is every place has a Gus's. New Orleans has got a Gus's now. LA's got a Gus's. We have the originals down here. And it is, at least as done here, it is fantastic. And I'm sure that the Nashville version would be as well. I just worry that there's going to be some like airport version and someone's going to go in there and get like the worst fried chicken of their life. Man, Gus's fried chicken, when it's done the way it's supposed to be, is phenomenal. Now I'm hungry. I have to settle for my ribs tonight. I'll get some fried chicken later this week. Hey, David Herrick. Don't use metal 9-volt. Oh, yeah. There you go. Center negative, center positive. What should be insulated, what should not. Yeah, you gotta... I tell you what, you will never make that mistake again. Congratulations, you are through that particular hoop, and it only cost you maybe $10 and some hair. We've all done it. You're not alone. Dry rub, salt, pepper, paprika. That's not a dry rub. That's just a gentle sprinkling. That's kind of like a vague suggestion of a dry rub. You need to add some cumin. You need to add some chili powder. You need to add a little brown sugar. You need to add a whole lot of garlic powder, maybe some onion powder if you're feeling real crazy. You need to get in there and rub it. You need to use some real good kosher salt, some coarse black pepper, some dried mustard will go a long way. And if you really want to go crazy, you could add some thyme or dried coriander seed. Now, I know to those earlier, I said I hate cilantro. I cannot stand the taste of the leaf. But the seed, when ground, is fantastic, especially pork. You need to really get your dry rub skills together. Don't be calling salt, pepper, and paprika a dry rub. Come on, man. I mean, you're doing pretty good for Norway, I suppose, but you come on down. You let me know. I'll take you around. I'll take you on a barbecue tour. Well, Sebastian, here's the thing. On your Harley Benton, you had to set up the price for your nephew. You had to set the whole thing up. For every one that can be set up, there's another one where the frets are sprouting like crazy or the neck's got a twist because they're using the cheapest of the cheap. For the price of a new Harley Benton, you could get a used Squire, or use something else. And sometimes you're better off buying a used cheap guitar than a brand new dirt cheap guitar. And I'm really not a fan of Harley Benton stuff. And it's not from snobbery. It's because the people... here's the thing. It's not because of snobbery. It is the opposite. The people most likely to buy a Harley Benton product, or to most likely to buy one of these $200 tube amps from China on Amazon or eBay or whatever. People most likely to buy these things are the very people who can least afford to get a bad version of it or to buy the wrong thing. And so these companies are predatory, taking advantage of people who don't have a lot of money. And that bothers me. I'd rather, if someone doesn't have much money, to buy a used example of something worth having, or to save up until there's something that is worth their money. Because if you have a small amount of money and you buy this thing for a small amount of money and then it fails because it's a piece of shit, then you know what you have? No money. You have no money, you have no thing, you have nothing. You have wasted what little resources you had, and you may stop playing, or you may, it is the worst thing that we do to people who are, I don't want to say to poor people, but because I've been there, to people who have to work really hard for anything. Stop taking advantage of them. So Harley Benton and all the others. Hey, Keat at Cheap Bar Studio. Just bought a 78 Twin with microphonic power tubes. Amtech is 3-hour drive away over the Southern Alps. What's the worst that'll happen if I drop in a matched quad without bias? Well, 78, it's got a fix. The bias is non-adjustable on a 78 Twin. All you've got control over is the bias balance between the pairs. And the good news on that is that the preset bias level is pretty cold. So you put in your new quad of matched 6L6s, and you turn that the hum reduction pot for the heater balance, for the bias balance, until you find the quietest position, and you do the same thing for your heater balance pot, and you just make music at that point. And they may be at 43%, they may be at 47%, and they may be at 52%. You don't know. You won't know. You won't have any control over that, but they won't be at 80%. They won't be at 10%, and you'll be able to play music and get a good sound, and everything will be fine. That's how Leo and the guys designed that entire series of amp. Even on the stuff before they went to I think 68 to the bias balance circuit, the stock amps were biased pretty cool on Fenders. They weren't coming out of the factory at 70%. They're coming out at 47, 44. So you could go down, if you need new tubes, you go down to the 5 and dime, where they sold tubes for people's TVs and radios, buy a new 6L6, pop it in there, turn the pot until the hum went away, go make music. We don't have that 5 and dime anymore, and RCA 6L6 isn't $2 anymore, but that pot still works the same way. Just know that if you have the heater balance pot, take the chassis out of the amp and make sure that nut is really tight, because those things get loose. And later remove that heater balance pot and put in 2 100 ohm resistors. If you're running a studio 3 hours away from a tech, you should be able to figure out how to solder in 2 resistors and remove those wires going to that pot. Hey, Tom Raines. We're going a little bit over. I'm trying to get caught up, but I want to certainly catch at least the super chats. Thank you, Tom. Recommendations on a small tube combo for blues jams. Prefer something with direct out for recording. Thoughts on Rev Dynamis 25, Moogie Mark 5 Bag Cat. Well, avoid the Boogie. They're not much better than Harley Benton. I have no experience with the Rev Dynamis 215 or the Bag Cat, and something about the concept of a DI out for blues jams bothers me. And I know that I'm saying that in Memphis, where we don't know nothing about blues. There are different ways to answer this. Traditionally, first of all, there's no such thing as a blues amp. Get a deluxe reverb, get a couple pedals if you need some more over that, some more gain. And that'll handle almost any jam situation you're ever going to run into. And if you need to record it, I'd rather have a really good amp and then maybe get a Sir reactive load box that you could tap into and to take a IR out of. Now, the Rev may be perfect. The Rev may be ideal. I have not tried a Rev. I don't know. But I think once you get into blues jams and you get into DIs out, that's a mess. Who's recording this blues jam? Is there a PA involved in this blues jam? I find way too many. There's a blues scene and there's a blues jam scene, and the blues scene has fewer dentists, and the blues jam scene has really expensive gear with DI outs, and I would not want to go hear one typically. Whereas if you go hear blues, there may be some guy playing a 15-watt solid-state PV with his PVT 40, and it sounds like shit, but it moves you. And the only recording of it is someone's phone in the room. So maybe that's just me being tired of the blues dentists scene. But the Rev may be fantastic. I don't have any experience of it. I've heard great things about them. Check out the Rev. Avoid the Boogie like the plague. And the Bag Cat, For that money, get a deluxe reverb. I'd say is probably pretty best bet. Barbecue. God bless Texas. Yeah, bless their hearts. They think they have barbecue. They don't have any idea what they're doing. They do smoked meat. They don't do barbecue. Smoked meat is not the same as barbecue. Barbecue is only ever mutton, goat, or pig. It's not chicken. It's not beef. It's not brisket. You know. Pastor, stop killing your amps, dude, man. No sound. Well, there's a whole things that could be a lot of things could be wrong, but we're gonna end this. Victor, I have to look and see what I paid for. I think I paid like $350, so maybe $300. Shoot me an email, Victor. Maybe I know you've had some things going on in your life. Maybe we can work out something. You know, I'd rather sell it to someone I know and like. Brad's got a premiere in 4 minutes, and I went long. I didn't see this, Brad, or I would have ended already. I'm so sorry, dude. So, all right, let's wrap up, and you guys go watch Brad's video. He's got some good stuff, and I am really sorry to go long on the one day that he had an auto. Oh well, his premiere didn't work. So anyway, he's got a video to watch after this. Yardbird dry rub. Look, Brad's in Australia, and his laundry list for a barbecue for a smoke rub is very similar to mine. Probably different ratios, but add some chili powder to that, man. And you can buy the pre-made stuff. I bet the Yardbird stuff is good, but it's pretty easy just to roll your own. Hey, Sean Allen, thank you very much. Thank you for being you with hearts popping out of his eyes. That sounds so painful. Oh, thank you so much, man. I appreciate that. Well, playing a bass guitar on a guitar tube amp likely damages the speaker by overheating the coil. It's usually fine. My God, there is no such thing as a bass amp for a long, long time. And the amps that were marketed as bass amps had guitar speakers. Now, if you play 5-string and slapping that B through a Princeton, yeah, you're kind of going to do something to the voice coil of an old Jensen. But you can typically play bass all day long through a twin reverb. So it all depends on a lot, and it also depends on the condition of the speakers. But the bass amplifier did not really exist until the Ampeg SVT 4x8 came around. That's for another time. But an awful lot of good stuff was done with Fender bass amps that were the same thing as Fender guitar amps, sometimes with a 15-inch speaker, sometimes with a whole bunch of 12s. Let's see. I think we're gonna have to wrap this up. Music Man amps, Neil Scott. Someone asked me that every stream. I think I've answered that about 4 times in the last 2 months. Yeah, I think I'm just gonna have to end it here. I really appreciate you all being here. Anejo. Yeah, anchos are good. Thank you all for joining me. It means a lot to me. I thought it was a good chat today. I finally got through, I'd say 99% of the questions. Might have missed a few at the very end, but there I am. Yeah, you mean Spanish? Thank you for catching that, Dustin. The Mexican language. Well, actually, having been taught Castilian Spanish in high school, there's a big difference between Castilian Spanish and the Spanish spoken in Mexico City, et cetera, et cetera. Basically, everything I learned to say in high school, if I go to certain streets in Memphis where Spanish is the lingua franca, so to speak, everything I say, "Excuse me, sir, would you be so good as to stab me, please?" So, I shouldn't say stab, but just beat me up, man. Beat me up now. Good sir, forsooth. See you guys.